And hello and welcome back, everybody, to RCI, the Friday GT World Championship. We are here back again, ready for another round of this very enthralling season. But for the very first time this season, I do not have a Mike Jones with me, which should have been indicative of the fact that I got to talk in the first 5 minutes of the broadcast. I'm with a very lovely Ryan Mawson, who's the busiest man in RCI recently. Hello, Ryan.
Yes, hello, Jesse. Well, when you have so much good racing, you've got to keep your eyes on everything, haven't you? You can't take your eye off the prize for a minute, and this one being the 2-hour special at Zolder with such a tightly packed field. How could you really say no to this? It's got everything, this track. A lot of twisty sections and some really exciting, well, let's call them jumps, if you will, for those who are brave enough to risk their car over them.
Yes, indeed. This race is 2 hours long. Zolder, one of my favorite tracks, Ryan. We'll get more into that in just a bit. But on top of that, something that I really like is we are just over the halfway point in the championship, and now a 2-hour race. Strategy is going to have to be different. People are going to have to reevaluate their tires, their fuel, a whole new level of strategy. And of course, it's all for championship points. It's the World Championship, for goodness sake.
Absolutely, and especially here at Zolder, tyre strategy is going to be key because one of the big points of Zolder, a lot of these curbs, the grass runoff areas, are notorious for giving you pressure losses over a stint. And if you're not careful, and I know this myself because I've done it, you can very easily get a puncture here. You start riding those curbs, riding the chicanes, and it will very, very quickly spiral out of your favor for the race. And the other problem you have as well, that second chicane is notorious for track limits. And in a 2-hour race, you don't want anything to be slowing up your charge.
Well, I was wondering how far we could get into the broadcast today before somebody mentioned tire pressure loss. That is indeed what I noticed the most about this track. Well, that, and of course, your second point there. Oh my goodness. The track limits here are a bit stingy.
Yeah, they are vicious. They take no liberties with anyone. And a lot of the times, you don't even need to have your car fully off the track, and you've got 3 strikes, and you are through the pits. And although it's not the world's most longest pits, it's not like Spa, for example, with a field this tight, even in a 2-hour race, I expect that to lose you a heap of positions, and gaining those back will be challenging.
Well, we are going to see exactly where everybody shakes out and what happens here today. And, well, your guess is as good as mine, Ryan. I know you haven't been here for the championship, but it's been absolutely incredible. We were at Barcelona a week ago, and fights all over the place and some contact. And I heard after the race bent fenders and some bent feelings after that one as well. We'll have to pay attention to see if that comes into play today. And did you see the air that car got off of that curb?
Yeah, that's what I mean when drivers are just committed to that absolute trying to get any sort of 10th of lap time, especially in a such car like the Porsche that Cody Pride is driving. Quite his common car for the PPR esports. We've seen him do great things in this Porsche before in the World Tour and wet Monza qualifying, for example. But yeah, fully committed with that. I know I wouldn't go anywhere near any of those curbs if I was driving a Porsche, let alone, though, you wouldn't really catch me driving a Porsche.
What would your car of choice be around here by chance?
Around here, probably still pick my trusty Bentley. There are a couple of cars that will be sort of more competitive. I know there's Ferrari being one of them, of Jardier. But I do like my Bentley, and that car basically just negates curbs. You drive over them like you're an SUV. There's just no curb there. It's merely a suggestion.
Well, we were at Kyalami some weeks ago, and I don't know if it was a driver that told me this or something we were talking about in the booth, but they talked about the Bentley, about running over curbs, and sometimes you can run over other cars and think it's a curb, And that's sort of the Bentley. The Bentley is a tank. Speaking of,
Yeah, Pierre Jenner. Like I said, it is. I mean, I think it's definitely got its flaws as this car, but if you can make it work, it is such a lovely thing to drive. It's kind of a weird handling mix of halfway between a mid-engined, where the rear end wants to slide, but you still have that front engine stability and ability to absolutely smash curbs. And I have a feeling that, yep, there we go. See, curbs were just merely a suggestion. We continue on like nothing really happened.
now one thing I'm going to defer to you because my experience is limited to the Aston and the Ferrari around here. Are there certain cars that are more prone to getting tire pressure loss going over these curbs than others, or is it a common theme for the Pirellis?
I believe it's really just a more common theme with the Pirellis. I would say probably some of the heavier cars I would expect to be a little bit more prone to it, just because of the weight that you've got clattering the curbs. But a lot of times it don't really take much. If you start touching the grass, that starts slowly gaining the pressures down. I've had it with multiple cars, and I can't really see a pattern to it other than just don't go near them. And the 194 trying to become part of the International Space Program there, nose right up in the air. He just had to briefly check on the weather. We'll go through, and nope, it doesn't look like it's going to be raining. Okay, keep these pressures.
That got a chuckle from our broadcaster, Stewie, who I very unfortunately forgot to mention. Of course, as always, broadcasting the race, he had a chuckle at that. And what a replay indeed from the onboard camera. You couldn't even see the trees. It was all sky, and you will want to avoid that in the race. And like I said, there were some hurt feelings after Barcelona a week ago. And I think that's not going to help by this track. If there was ever a track in ACC that can hurt somebody's feelings and get their temper, this is the equivalent of racing at like a go-kart track.
Oh yeah, it's tight, it's twisty. A lot of the overtaking spots where there are going to be overtakes, you need to be committed and make sure that you can get that overtake done. Otherwise, it will not pull off for you. So yeah, it is a very, very technical track. And that's another point that we see is that Bentley gets teleported back to the pits. The pit lane is actually another place where I've seen plenty of drivers end up yeah, a bit like this, having problems or speeding. You've got to keep your eye on that board on the left. And I've seen plenty of stop-go 30s doing league races here. It's not uncommon.
Yes, indeed. Well, let's go ahead and set the format for you today, and we will talk about the points after qualifying as practice ends. But here's the format today: a special 2 hour race, round 5 of 8 in the World Championship. Of course, this is the top split, as you might have expected. And other than it not being a 60 or a 75-minute race, they're going to have to make 2 pit stops today, Ryan Mawson, and they're going to have to take at least 1 liter each. But it's a little more complicated than that. I reckon there might be significant strategy on what and when they take that stop. You would assume at some point they're going to take tires, because I don't think anybody can make it 2 hours on tires here. At least you wouldn't want to. And you would like to have that slap dab in the middle of the race, but if you split the race into thirds, you can't do that. As qualifying starts, Ryan, help me with strategy. What do you do?
Yeah, now that you've got 2 mandatory stops, that really sort of opens it out, especially with, like I said, no sort of requirements for each. Cars, like we're seeing on screen, like the Lexus, I will expect to be taking tires, and possibly their fastest strat might be to just try eke them out. The Lexus is very, very tire hungry, very fuel hungry as well, actually. So they will be needing a full tank and to sort of make the tires last. Cars like the Bentley, I expect to go quite long. They have a fairly large fuel tank and are good on fuel, good on the tires. So I expect them to be, filling the tank, trying to go as long as humanly possible. A lot of the other cars are sort of a mix of driver preference. For example, the Porsche can do, if you full tank a Porsche and you can run it all the way to the end, it can do great things. But the lower and lower you run that fuel tank, the more and more sketchy it becomes. And at a track like this, where you are clattering curbs and there's a lot of technical direction changes, it's really up to the driver if they feel that they can do that. Sort of similar with the mid-engine cars. The Ferrari, though, being the better on the fuel of the mid-engines, so I expect them to, we might see a bit of a fuel play strategy going on, sort of going to the ends, and then it might be a 1 litre stop and drop by the end. So it blows everything wide open, as we see the Lexus now coming on for the first flying lap to see what provisional pole may be.
Who do you like here today at Zolder? Zolder's a very different track, and that will bring new players, and by players, I mean manufacturers, to the front of the field. Ryan, who do you like here?
Oh, putting me on the spot there. Considering I haven't been at this Friday Championship for long, but having watched a couple of them, with how tight the field can get, it's almost like basically anyone can take it. As you said, Zolder is so much of a different track. It requires a different sort of driver and some severe commitment. We see the Lexus all the way over the curb, completely sideways. It saves it just about. But it is such a hard one. I think sort of the old motto of who dares wins, that will definitely be in play here at Zolder.
I like it. I like that commentary, because I think that is the correct answer. You're going to see somebody's race ruined today by making a move, perhaps over a curb that gets them into another car, because let's say that they're in space shuttle position when they're not a space shuttle and they can't steer and they get into somebody else, or they're going to get one too many track limits warnings by ACC and it's going to turn it on its head. Or the unfortunate thing, of course, the Friday Championship is live stewarded. Hello to all the RCI stewards out there. And well, the other big thing here, a lot of chicanes, a lot of opportunities to get yourself into trouble trying to overtake on a tight track, and that could change the complexion of this race today as well, though, of course, we hope that not the case. Malinowski, who was a winner a few weeks ago, sets the quickest lap so far, 27.690, and that will not be the opening shot in qualifying, but it will be the loudest one so far. Fabian Piffet in the 195, 1/10 off, and just about 4/100ths off of him. Vanbrugh in the 19. Bentley, a whole host of Bentleys, in fact, at the back half of the top five, with Geiner and Grady feeling out the top five spot. You got to go back to Albin Bouquet in sixth place before you find a car that's outside of a half a second. This little bullring racetrack, it is going to be really close in qualifying.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And these are just sort of the first flyers. These haven't even really, where the drivers have maybe got the tires up to the absolute optimum. They haven't started to try push and really find where their time was. So I think these times are just going to continue to tumble with the 10 minutes left. It is such a short circuit. Normally when we have a sort of hot shot 10-minute qualifying in RCI, we always mention that, you know, you've only got a limited number of laps and you've got to be careful with them. But at a 1-minute 27 lap time, you can really plow them out. In fact, a lot of these drivers might actually have to pull into the pits back again to put some fuel in the car.
Yeah, you know me, Ryan. I love to talk about how quick a lot of the qualifying sessions here at RCI, very efficient qualifying sessions. It's get all you can, and you don't have time for any sort of mistakes. Well, I didn't mention that today, and you're very spot on. That's why it's not a factor here, folks. A 127, the current fastest lap tonight by Massoud. By the way, Albin Bouquet, who is sixth, now goes second, just about 1.5 off the overall pace. So 27.360, the time to beat. And now there are 8 drivers that are all under half a second. And folks, it's not going to get any wider than that. In fact, quite the opposite. It's going to get a lot closer, as Mikael Sundstrom, for nearly on pace in the 899, goes third, 0.3 off the pace, but now gets bumped down to fourth. Joe McCauley now in third place in the Lamborghini, of all things.
Yeah, and welcome to the manufacturer battles. We have Porsche, Audi, Lamborghini, Bentley. Those are the top 4. And actually, Fabian Piffet, so far looking like he's actually trending up an absolute metric ton. So this might be another provisional pole with the Lexus. And he does. He goes
Wow.
127.084. So I bet that we're going to start seeing the 26s.
I wouldn't bet against that. And the track is not completely rubbered in, as you can see in the top right corner, as well as we can. It's just fast. It's not optimum, so it isn't as quick as it could be. Who's to say in another 8 minutes that it won't be optimum? Everything else is pretty optimum, though, to be completely fair. Partly cloudy, 20 degrees C on the track, 17 ambient. Lovely day here at Zolder, and just a light breeze. Nothing really to speak about. And Cody Pride, who hasn't set a single lap yet in the PPR Esports 33, will now get a lap going here. See where Pride shakes out here. And all the way up to 12th place within a second. And Joe McCauley, who was very briefly second, all the way back to 6th. What do they have? Can't do, well, actually does do better indeed. A 27.546 puts them in 6th. I was reading some old messages about Joe in our Discord here at RCI. For those of you that aren't a part of our Discord, it's link in the description. Join the Discord. We'd love to have you for races. But I was reading some old messages. Apparently, Joe McCauley doesn't like me very much.
What have you done to upset him, Jesse?
I don't remember, but I must have done something in January because he was talking a lot of smack.
Have you commentators cursed him, and that's why? Did we have any race in January?
Oh, no, do you know what it is? I do remember what it was, and that was what it is. I mentioned Joe McCauley was doing well. I think it was at Bathurst, and, well, their team didn't finish. That's exactly what happened now that I remember that.
Yeah, you see, it's the great power that we are blessed with and also cursed with. We cannot mention certain teams that are doing things, otherwise other things may happen to them.
Yes, we got to speak very cryptically. I know that's not fun for you at home, but well, we like the drivers that we have here at RCI, and we don't wish them any harm. So sometimes we speak a bit cryptically about it, but yeah, I remember that now. That's exactly what it was. Joe, I think I had made mention that he was doing well several times in a row where he and his teammates had issues. As qualifying still continues, the fastest mark of 27.084. Quarter of a second back to Massoud, and just about 2/100ths back to Geiner in 3rd. Vanbrugh 4th, and Boothby 5th. We haven't talked about Boothby at all today. The man that has been running away with the championship. He's won 3 of the rounds thus far. And it is all coming up Boothby, but we'll talk about that more after qualifying. In fact, we will show you what that points gap looks like. What does Martin Grady have for Tigney here? The 418. Had some fans of Martin Grady in chat saying that Grady might be the dark horse here, Ryan, as he's really proficient at Zolder.
Yeah, well, especially in that Bentley. At the minute, he is trending up, so as the drag race to the line, we'll see where he jumps up to. It is currently 12th, but you say it's all the way down in 12th. That is only 0.66 of a second off the leader, which on a lap like this is really, really not much.
No, it is not. I mean, it's such a short lap, and it is very easy to find time and lose time. As Kalat goes up to 2nd place there, slots themselves with a 27.318, just under a quarter of a second down. Fabian Piffet has laid a lap down that, I mean, I know it's only a quarter of a second there, Ryan, but it's proving difficult to get even close to.
Yeah, so Fabian Piffet has laid down the gauntlet for everyone else, and so far, no one seems to have touched it. Malinowski improves. It's a 127.372. 4th place for him. Once again, just under a 1/10 of a second off that podium position, or the final rank on it. Martin Grady, once again, trending up. We'll see where he comes through the last corner if he can hold it. And as we know, sometimes times for the drivers are in different places. He could have lost it all in the last corner for all we know. And that puts him up to P3, just sneaking the podium with the exact same time. A 127.318. Second and third, both Bentleys and both tied.
Well, that's fantastic. If you're not sure or you don't understand how they're tied and they line up second and third, well, it's actually very simple as Deckers gets a little sideways there, unsettles the car, not quite on the racing line, and resets. He may have been trying to avoid the car coming out of the pit lane there and got a little spooked. But in case you're wondering how that works, they had the exact same time and Grady is third. Well, I think in most GT3 racing, I think it's especially at SRO, but I think it's the same in WEC and IMSA as well. The first person to run that time, if it's identical down to the 1,000th decimal point, whoever runs that lap first gets the preferable position or the higher position, as Pierre here goes off into the barrier. That's going to be a common occurrence. But yes, Grady ran the lap second, so he has to have, or he gets the second spot. That will work the same way. We have had races in the past where 3 drivers have all ran the same lap time, and that stinks too. Whenever you run a lap that's equal to second place and all of a sudden you're starting fourth because you're the third driver to run that lap.
Yeah, and just sort of the way that the draw works. Mazans, though, sort of the last Porsche on the way, and now is actually P2. And there you go. Perfect puts down the gauntlet again at a 26.859. The track has now swapped to optimum, so we're now really starting to see the times come down and down.
I think Fabian Piffitt's just flexing on him there a little bit with that. I don't even think that's everything Piffitt has. As you'll have to excuse that. Did anybody else hear that, or was that just me?
That was something.
We heard a very loud crack of thunder in the background, and it startled us in the booth there, which we're wondering if that was the ACC sound thing that occasionally happens, or if that was something else. And indeed, it was something else. You just count your lucky stars that you didn't hear that. Otherwise, you would have jumped at home as well. Either way, I digress. I get back to the point. 26.858 is the mark to beat by Fabian Piffitt, and I think he's just flexing on him. I don't think that's everything he has, and I'm fairly confident that we could see a 26.7 or even a 6. A 26.6, I think, would be pretty darn good. Romain Thomas for Valkyrie Esports gets a couple more positions up to the 16th place position. And quite frankly, Ryan, it doesn't matter where you start here today. This is one of those tracks that you, with strategy, 2 hours and a pit stop and you would assume a tire change at some point. It doesn't really matter where you qualify. I reckon you could win it from just about anywhere.
Yeah, especially as well with a lot of this is going to be a race of attrition, is just staying out of those track limits, the walls, the tire pressure losses, anything like that. And if you are one of those people who can keep it that consistent for 2 hours, I think they're going to do really well here. But yeah, Fabian Piffitt just running away with it, 4/10 quicker than anyone else so far. And is still, by the looks of it, has got one more lap to go.
Qualifying coming to an end here. Time for everybody to run their final laps as the timer has expired. All flying laps count, of course. And here comes Julian Vanbrugh, who spent a lot of the early parts of this session in the top 5, down to 8th now. We'll be looking to pick up just a 10th. And just a 10th would bump them all the way back up near the podium, probably about 4th. Where are they going to cycle out, though? As Vanbrugh comes to the line and goes P2, a massive improvement of 26.895 for Vanbrugh. Gets it done. Massoud comes across the line, an improvement of 27.171. Will put them provisionally 3rd. Fabian Piffitt will not run another lap. 26.859, the mark to beat, and we'll rest on that. Sundstrom Kalat in the pit lane. Grady still running a lap, and so is Werner Deckers, who we saw earlier taking avoiding action and spin off, but this lap will count. Decker's trying to get that Honda out of the basement. As now it looks like Grady, Malinowski, Geiner all complete and in pit road. McCauley through in ninth place. Boothby in the pit lane. He, our championship leader, will start 10th. Bouquet in 11th. Pride 12th. Pretty much the only car left was Decker's, and that was not an improvement on the lap board. Well, there you have it. The results of qualifying. And we mentioned the championship. Well, it has been a bit of a runaway for one driver in particular. George Boothby has won 3 out of the 4 championship rounds that we have done so far. And it's all coming up Boothby with 250 points, 154 for Albin Bouquet. And your pole sitter today, Fabian Piffet, at 150. And this could be the race that Piffet needs to get back in the championship conversation. Already third, but being 100 points out is a little bit more difficult to get back into it in the waning championship rounds. But all things are possible, especially with a good race from Piffet today. Jardier in 4th. Malinowski is the only other driver to win this season and finds themselves in 5th. Of course, Malinowski would be higher had they not had some unfortunate disconnect issues. Juan Zimes 6th. Parker 7th. Cody Pride in 8th. Martin Grady 9th. And Massoud the top 10. And these drivers here have had a bit of a struggle. Still Vassen 11th. Sundstrom, Karsten, Vanbrugh, Mark Vart are the top 15. Leone, Deckers, Thomas, Dornelis, and Herbenau the top 20. And mostly drivers here that have struggled very much so or have not completed all the rounds. Kalat, Dowdini, Lawrence, McCauley, Bellassane, Kovacs, Was, Samard, Willamont, and Dorsch. I think there actually might be another page here with a couple of drivers. And these are the drivers that definitely haven't completed all of the rounds. Sons, Roth, Anafrev, Geiner, Soldatov, Hooley, Jose Jorges, Rambach, Mironov, and Simon Keeble. Of course, we have had a ton of drivers in the championship, and of course, there are some that only made one round or so. Yimaz, Fav, Sky, King, Santos, and Santamato are the 46 drivers that have taken part in the championship. Of course, we don't have 46 drivers in the race today, and I think everybody's kind of sigh of relief that that's not the case. Ryan, I don't think I've ever seen 46 cars as Zolder.
No, I could imagine that being an absolutely mad start. I mean, even with this many cars, I expect some people to still be coming through that last corner as we hit the green and we get a nice grid walk looking at Fabian Piffet, the car that is basically looks like it's going to rocket away with this. But we'll see what happens when you turn this Lexus into race trim. Some cars do absolutely phenomenally when you take all the fuel out of them, and they become a very, very different beast when you actually put them into race trim. So that's definitely a car to keep an eye on. The Bentleys I do expect as well to be very good in race trim, but it'll be interesting to see what strategy they have. Are they going to go a light fuel load and try get in front of Piffet and run away and keep track position? Or will they brim the tank and go fully long?
And that is the strategy. And unfortunately, from our vantage point, we won't know until they pit. When they pit, though, we will have a good idea of what their strategy was. But until then, that is the $1 million question. When do you come in for tires? You must come in twice for at least 1 liter of fuel. We know every driver in the field will need more than a liter of fuel. So like Ryan, like you said, how much fuel do you start on? When do you pit for the tires? How do you split this up? Do you get tires late? Do you get tires early? Oh boy, there's a lot of conversation to be had in this 2-hour race. This was one that I circled on my calendar that I wouldn't miss, even if I wasn't here in the booth with you all. Just a brief moment. Would like to thank you all for joining us on a Friday evening. We hope that wherever you are in the world, that you're having a fantastic Friday evening, and thank you for spending a little part of that with us. And we hope you're ready for some GT racing action. And oh, yes, it is black belt in belting. As some of the signage here, as our broadcaster Stewie uh, takes the drone camera and looks at some of the beautiful architecture here in Zolder and some of the excellent modeling of Kunos here in ACC. But it is going to be an interesting race on all accounts. Everybody strap in. And if you haven't already, why not like, subscribe, hit that bell, and don't miss a single race. If you like Ryan Mawson and myself, well, you'll want to turn up for Night Owl tomorrow night as well. Get your jammies on and watch some crazy GT racing tomorrow night with Ryan. Ryan, you've been incredibly busy this week. I was hanging out yesterday listening to the broadcast you were on, and now you're back today filling in for Mr. Mike Jones, and you're going to be with me tomorrow. When are you going to take a break? Are you tired yet?
Oh, you never get tired of GT racing, Jesse. Like, I mean, not just long ago, I was sat with my 3 screens with various YouTube streams on, watching the qualifying for N24. You never really get tired of GT racing. I think a lot of the people who are at my work think I'm a little bit mad. Everything is GT, my wallpaper, what I do, my streams, just constant talking about it. But when you can see races like this where you've got 16 odd cars, all different makes, all different drivers, different styles, all within a second, it just makes the racing so much more exciting. Basically, anyone can win this.
Very much so. And as the famous sprint car Australian announcer used to say, folks, if this doesn't turn you on, then you don't have a switch. And that's kind of the mentality here, because there are 20 drivers, sure, but any one of them can capture a podium or a win here. George Boothby, though, we showed you the championship points. They're starting 10th today. It is going to be all about managing that gap now to the end of the championship. You've done well, 3 wins to get to this point. You can't afford to give any of it up. But alas, Fabian Piffet already gaining points today for qualifying on the pole position. And I can't think, based on that pole time, I can't think that anyone else is going to be able to hold a candle to him today. What could you possibly do? Try to out-strategize him maybe?
Pretty much a lot of the times the Lexus, I've never really been able to think of a way to simply outdrive a Lexus. The speed that these cars have, the acceleration, and their great wet weather performance, it makes it a very good all-rounder car. They're very, very difficult to just straight up outdrive on the track. But because they do like to chew tires, and because they do burn a lot more fuel than, say, a lot of the other cars are, that's the only real way I've been able to think of a way to beat them, is strategy.
Well, we were supposed to have 21 cars on the grid tonight, as evidenced by our chat here. Martin Lawrence said that he was trying to make it into the race, and otherwise he would have done, but ACC has decided that he doesn't need to race tonight. So that's a bit unfortunate for Martin Lawrence there, but appreciate the effort as we go green.
And it looks like a great start from the Bentley on P2. Trying to go around the outside of Piffet, but you can just see, look at the drag that Lexus has got. Defends the inside for turn 2, and everyone else sort of filing back out. And now the Porsche, actually, that is Mesond, looking up the inside of Ambra, but nothing to be yet. Got to really warm those tires up slowly, especially on these compound of tires.
We didn't really talk about it, but you don't want to be too wide here, and you definitely don't want to dip a tire into the dirt or the grass. That's going to be a big problem, and everybody stacking up down to the first chicane, avoiding action by the Aston Martin there is going to have to cut the corner, and they're going to be 3 wide. That's something else you don't want to do here. This track can barely accommodate 2 wide, and they're going 3 wide. They sorted out, thankfully, but still 2 wide through the chicanes, not a great idea, and the Aston Martin sends it, full send, contact, another contact with the Lamborghini, and Macaulay will not appreciate that very much from Thomas. But either way, everybody pointed the right direction and dive bombs down into the hairpin. And that's going to cause a local yellow, a couple of cars spinning. McCauley spins Thomas as everybody scatters and tries to get out of the way. Chaos here at the end of lap 1. They're still going off.
Just as you said, everyone was pointing the right way. Everyone was pointing the wrong way. But, I mean, we did expect kind of some form of lap 1 madness. And, yeah, just coming into the braking zone for the hairpin. It is a very, very deep braking zone. It is a place you can make maneuvers. But as I said, you can only make them work if you are absolutely sure and committed to that move.
Well, a couple of cars diving down pit road immediately. Some significant damage, I would call it, from some of the teams. Boothby up 2 spots to 8th place. Jardier, who he didn't even talk about in qualifying, into the top 10. As we're going to watch a replay of the start of that race. Nearly around the outside did Grady get it, and then immediately trying the switchback here to get into position. A superb challenge, and excuse me, that was Vanbrugh. And to Vanbrugh's credit, he hasn't backed off yet. He's still right there with Pivot.
No, he's still hanging on to it, which I have a feeling will be, like I said earlier, that strategy difference. The Bentley really hanging on. So the car that looked like it was just going to run away with it now, not really being able to flex its sort of superb speed, as you see Malinovsky going up the inside of one of the Audis. Slight tap and a touch of the grass. Keeps it on the road.
Smart driving by Bouquet, though. Bouquet was able to save that there, but more cars coming into pit road. George Boothby in here very early indeed. Now, what on earth could this be about? Could this just be... Now go with me here, Ryan. I thought about this. Technically, you only really need to pit here once. You split this, it's a 2-hour race, you split it in 2. Why wouldn't you just throw away one of the pit stops, put the liter of fuel in, get back out there, race the race to halfway, put the tires on that you're going to need to go to the end, put the fuel you need to go to the end, and just throw away that first pit stop? I think some of these top teams are doing that as they all bunny hop over the inside island to the chicane. I love it. But what do you think about that strategy?
Yeah, I have a feeling that that's a lot of what these teams will be doing, especially if you've been involved in either a slight clonk on the lap 1, or you're really in a battle that you know you don't want to be in. You know, it's getting too hectic. Sometimes the strategy can be, yeah, just throw away one of the pit stops that you know is going to be either a damage repair or just 1 liter of fuel and back out. Then you're in clean air. You know, if you can then match sort of really good high race pace times, you're essentially overtaking the people who are in front of you. It'll be done in the pit stop. So we really have to keep an eye on now on the people who are in the bottom half of the field. You can't write off anyone yet.
That's very true. As looky here, Julian Vanbrugh for Team Shizou has made a pass on our leader Fabian Piffet. What manner of things has happened to Piffet, and it's going off. I talked about it on that opening lap. You cannot go off here at Zolder. It slows you down so much, folks. It's almost like hitting a stop stick. It is the weirdest thing. I don't know why here more than anywhere else, but I've always felt like that. And there you have it. The fastest car in qualifying being overtaken, running a bit wide, judging the last chicane a little bit wrong. New leader of the race, Julian Vanbrugh. Oh, no!
Whoa.
Oh, Fabian Piffet's been taken out. Massoud misses the corner, locks it up, and runs into the back of Fabian Piffet. And all of a sudden, chaos here in the second chicane. Or actually, it's the first chicane. Oh, no! Just a complete misjudgment of the braking zone. Locking up the brakes, trying to avoid everybody was Massoud. To no avail. There's just not enough room there. Fabian Piffet will be furious.
Yeah, 2 into 1 does not go just that tiny bit late on the brakes. You can see the panic there from the driver. There is, you can't dive right, you can't dive left. You just got to sort of make the worst of a bad situation. But yeah, for Piffet, all the way down in 6th now. And like I said, any slight problem you have on this track will, in this close field, will demote you a ton of places. Now, it will be interesting. Piffet is still going around. So I have to keep an eye. I have a feeling he might pit soon and do that, filling up a little bit of fuel and continuing on. We'll have to see how his race plays out. He's now got Jardier in his sights to hunt down.
Oh dear. Well, I promised all of you at home it was going to be a good race, and I told you it was one that I circled on the calendar, but not even me, not even I could have predicted this. It's been absolutely insane. Fabian Piffet filters out into the sixth place position behind Jardier, who, by the way, again, we didn't talk about in qualifying because there wasn't much to talk about, but that's Jardier for you. He doesn't qualify pole position every race, but he always races better than he qualifies, which is very exciting for us. I don't know where he qualified, but he's in the top 5 now. We caught him in 9th a few laps ago. He's up in the top 5. It's been a crazy race thus far. Vanber leads Sundstrom and Kalat. That is your top 3. And here's a replay again of the accident. And yes, just a misjudgment there. That is so common around this joint. It is unfortunate for everybody. Massoud knew that they were going to miss that corner. They tried to miss everybody, throw it into the Armco, throw it into the sand. Unfortunately, well, very tight confines here.
Yeah, and when you're that close to someone else, you basically got the whole car filling your view. It's very hard to see the braking boards around here. They're already so small, and most times actually they're up on the fencings and the gantries, so it's very, very easy to miss them. But yeah, sad moment there. Both Massoud and Piffet still continuing on though.
Couple of comments from chat. Of course, we will be reading chat all race as per usual around here. Chris Vining mentions that turns out the best strategy to outdrive the Lexus was just have somebody take it out. Very funny. It's funny to everyone but Fabian Piffet, who will be steaming under his helmet, I assure you. Thank you to Rebston and Altruit, who mentioned that Jardier started 13th. So going ahead and confirming that he did start outside the top 10 and he's 5th now. Absolutely brilliant. I would expect nothing less. It would have been weirder had he not already been in the top 5. That's unfair to say of anybody, but it is just how Jardier operates. A very intelligent and fast driver is Jards, and well, we'll see if he can continue this run that he's been on. It's been fantastic so far.
Yeah, but he can't really take his eyes off the mirror for too long. You can tell Piffet wants to climb up that tower again. It's all over the back of Jardier, even in the braking zones. You can see getting right under the wing of that Ferrari, just trying to get anything. Because now with Piffet with rear damage, that will likely be affecting him in the corners. I expect the rear end of that Lexus to start getting a little bit more loose. And actually, that might start hurting his tire strategy.
Well, I'll tell you something interesting. Our broadcaster Stewie has noticed and pointed out to us that Massoud in the 100 that was running 3rd earlier, that got into the back of the Lexus pictured here, they're losing 1.5 to 2.5 seconds here because of the accident and the damage. And it's a bit confounding. Why do you think that the 100 hasn't pitted yet?
Unless it is just they have a known fuel strategy and they're trying to work to that. So maybe if they know that they have to do 5 to 10 more laps, then pit and they can make it to the end, or there's a certain strategy that they're trying to go for. It could be something like that, really. We don't know how much, well, I think it's 120 litres the Porsche holds, but we don't know what fuel strategy or what map or anything that they're on currently.
Well, just to keep you abreast of the teams that came in early, Boothby, Grady, Decker, Solns, Geiner, Bouquet, and McCauley all came in at the end of lap 1 or 2. Some at the bottom, like Bouquet and McCauley, had damage. Others didn't, such as likes of George Boothby, who is the leader of the cars that have done their first mandatory stop. It was routine for Boothby. No additional work done. And the car is clean. The same with Grady in the 418. Grady, by the way, is still fighting with Boothby over that honor of being the first car on the road that has pitted. We suspect that what they're going to do is run to the halfway point, change tires, put all the fuel they need in the car, and run to the end. Now, if there's one thing about racing drivers we all know is that we assume that, and they are going to prove us wrong in another 40 minutes or so. And that's what we assume they are doing. And it also, for the time being, got them out of traffic and trouble. And what a treat and a present that may end up being. But I think Boothby was about sixth, seventh, or eighth, one of those, whenever they came in. The same with Grady. So, well, we'll know in about 40-some minutes' time if that strategy works, as Dornelis continuing to get worked by Cody Pride here.
Yeah, you can see Porsche right up against, trying for the move that we saw take the lead with Vanbrugh, but nothing quite there. The Dornell's not running that wide yet, but you can really see where the Porsche sort of has its strides. It is anything twisty. And speaking of what was the leader, Fabian Piffert will come into pit road.
I suspect a significant bit of damage on that Porsche, and that will take some doing, and penalties already being handed out. Or excuse me, Lexus, my correction there, but penalties being handed out. Thomas with the first one, a 5-second penalty for the 42. As Massoud still hasn't pitted and now is on the back of Hooley all of a sudden.
Yeah, and it is so hard to battle someone when you've got a car that's taken such a hard hit into the wall. I mean, we can see the damage on the side of the car. And this is a replay from earlier, which is what got the 5-second penalty to the Aston Martin.
Just a dive bomb there, Ryan. Just a dive bomb, and a little, stewards deemed that a little too aggressive. So Justin Hooley has also received a 5-second penalty, and that is what it is for. Yes, so 5 seconds for the 42 that you saw for the forceful overtake with a contact, and the 5 seconds for the 331 for avoidable contact. Oh, yes, that penalty, correction, that penalty was apparently not on the 28. That penalty was on the 331. So there's no penalty on Hooley. There is a penalty on the 331 for avoidable contact that was pictured in that replay. We just had the wrong car number, but you get the idea. I feel like those are fair, Ryan.
Yeah, absolutely. And the live stewards making sure that all the racing here today is clean, fair, and even though if you have sort of one small 5-second, it isn't the end of the world. You just got to make sure now that you don't start amassing them like like postage stamps, and then you end up with a big penalty on your hands.
Well, mentioned Cody Pride in qualifying, not having quite the qualifying that you would expect Cody Pride to have. The race has come to them just a little bit. They avoided a lot of the early race calamity and have settled into a groove and is now trying to take the 6th place back. Well, there is one thing missing from the day. Where's the Pride Tribe at? I haven't seen any of the Pride family in chat. Raise up, Pride family. Where's the Pride Tribe at? Come on, guys. You know you got to be here for Cody, and I'd love to see you guys in chat if you are there. Might be ordering pizza or something. I don't know.
Probably, and we've seen them around at Night Owl before as well. Though when Cody Pride won Brands Ratch, they're just all over chat.
I love to see it. The Boothby family, they show up and cheer on George Boothby, and I always I talk to George about that, how cool that is, because I've never experienced anything quite like that, and to have that sort of family involvement where they are watching and cheering you on. And the same thing with Cody Pride. I know Boothby's father refuses to talk to him mid-race. I think that's a very novel thing. I wish I had a father like that when I was sim racing, when I was a teen at home. That would have kept me in a couple of races, I think. But for Cody Pride, just the entire family The mom, dad, grandparents, uncles, siblings. Just it's absolutely incredible. A tribe indeed. Well, this is your leader of the race, Julian Vanbrugh for Team Shazoo. Did not qualify here and might be a bit surprised at how they took the lead. A mistake by then leading Fabian Piffet led to the overtake that then led to contact between two of the drivers, leading the Lexus to be put on the back foot. Not what Piffet needed after a strong qualifying effort, but Julian Vanbrugh, oh my goodness, can you believe it? I'd have to be settling myself down right about now.
Yeah, I mean, that race really has just come to them. Got by a great move up coming into turn one when Piffet made that ever so small mistake. And then basically in the mirror, both drivers just disappear and they've had their own accident. And now you've just got to get your head down and start pulling away from Sundstrom. As it says now with P1, 2, 3, all Bentleys, and all of them seem to be running slightly different pace, which would sort of indicate to me that actually they're on different strategies. So we might see a shake-up eventually. I would expect the 899 as a Sundstrom car to be that little bit more sort of up in the up chasing Vanbrugh. But I think that actually those will be two different drivers with two different strategies, having watched the 899 before.
So, in stark contrast to me doing the maths, our broadcaster Stewie has been doing the maths, and he says he reckons if all pit stops are equal, which we don't know if they are going to be, obviously, but let's just pretend and say that they are, Boothby might have the right strategy here and be within a second or two of the leader, Vanbrugh. So that's interesting. If that turns out that way, that could mean Boothby, who qualified 10th, could end up effectively having a shot to win this race. That's absolutely incredible. I think that strategy was the right strategy. Avoid lap one calamity, come in, get out of the middle of the fight to prevent yourself from being involved in any more on-track altercation, and go out there and run qualifying laps for a little while. That's all it takes. We talked about it, Ryan. It doesn't matter. Most places qualifying really matters. Here, I don't feel like it does. Strategy is king, and George Boothby just might be the one that has the right strategy.
Yeah, obviously, he's had the right idea, and as he says, if the maths all works, that's paid off amazingly for him. We'll have to see what happens as the race goes on. We'll sort of maybe have another rejig of the maths a little bit, because what you then have to take into account, so once you've pitted early, that's amazing, but you are then sometimes the first people to get into traffic when everyone else starts pitting, which then can actually sometimes really slow down your race. It really, really depends on what people do in pit stops and who comes out where. And speaking of Boothby and Grady, this is the battle for the cars which have pitted. And Grady looking up to the inside. He does have a slight overlap coming into the final chicane. And will he try it up the inside? He will, but then he's on the outside for the last corner. Boothby just about keeps the place.
Well, it is no surprise that Grady is fighting with Boothby here. Keep in mind, this may be ultimately important. These teams have pitted, especially these two, Boothby and Grady have pitted, did not have damage. That was their strategy from the jump, to come in immediately and serve that first mandatory stop. You only have to take a liter of fuel, but to get to the finish of this race, you will have to take at least some racing fuel, and we assume some tires, because, well, you're not going to want to be out here running very slow lap times in a 2-hour race. So if Grady is able to get through, that would be mega for his effort, and I think it's possible. The fastest driver on the track, according to the lap times, is the driver of the 418 Bentley. He is the fastest by, get this, 2 100ths of a second.
Yeah, Grady in the 418 and the leading Bentley just appear to be flying, which would sort of put the maths of Stewie quite correct, that if these guys are so close together, and Boothby is just about pacing the 418, then yeah, I would say that they will be up around the top half of the field when everyone's cycled out. It's definitely going to have to be one that we keep a sharp eye on.
Yes, indeed. Altruit in chat says that he's been friends with George Boothby for about 15 years. So I reckon that you sort of grew up together in one sense or another. Perhaps Altruit, you can tell me, has he always been this fast? Because absolutely lightning quick is George Boothby.
Yeah, some of the sim racers that I've known, and some of the people that you see in sort of real life motorsport. I mean, one that I always remember, which sort of really caught my attention, was when I went to go watch British GT at Brands Hatch. And reading through the race program, you realise that the entire F3 field, apart from 2 drivers, were 16, 17, and 18-year-olds. And it's like, I wish I could be driving a Formula car when I was 16. When I was 16, I was doing much less useful things with my life. Mainly doodling things.
When I was 16, I had several jobs, and the one that I was the most fond of was cleaning out horse pens, and I was very fond of that, among other things. And absolutely lovely times. Spent the weekend at the racetrack, as you will do when you're a proper petrol head.
And while we've briefly had off camera, look, Cody Pride snuck up the inside of Donnell's. Just a slight twitch from the Bentley ran him out wide going into turn 2, and that was all Cody Pride needed. He didn't need a second invitation. And that Porsche looking incredibly racy, really committed over those curbs. The suspension crying in anguish, but now he's got Jardier to chase down. So let's see what the Porsche can do.
Well, the 194 has got a 5-second penalty for taking out the 7, and there you have it. That is the accident in question. So 5-second penalty for the 194, running deep, taking out the 7, and waiting for them to come back through to return the position. So the penalty reduced to just 5 seconds. And also, additionally, you see a 4th 5-second penalty on there. That's because the number 100 car has received a 5-second penalty for taking out the 195. That is, of course, Fabian Piffet and Massoud. We're going to watch that one more time as the 100 gets a 5-second penalty. Reduced penalty due to Massoud returning said position. And that is how it works here at RCI, and I think that's a fair assessment. If you realize that you've made a mistake and you concede the position and you no longer impede progress, I reckon it is worth a reduced sentence. Thoughts, Ryan?
Yeah, it's really, I would say so as well. You've got to have something to have a bit of a reminder that you were naughty and don't do it again. But really, if both drivers have suffered and the one who's caused the accident has ended up worse and given the position back, then yeah, I would just see the 5-second as a justified. And Cody Pride now really closing up to the back of Jardier and that Ferrari through sector 2. You really see where the Porsche shines. It's anything that's really pointy and anything that needs a hard braking zone. Brakes of the Porsche are just probably the best in the GT3 field. It's really quite spooky when you see people brake. The Porsche brakes another maybe a couple of tenths later, and you think they are not going to stop, and somehow that Porsche does.
When I first started trying to drive Porsches, we're going to see Martin Grady trying to go around the outside the long way around. Of course, we're talking about people that have fan groups here in the chat. Well, Martin Grady certainly has that in spades as well. A lot of Go Tidge in the chat, and look at this side by side. Folks, I can't tell you how difficult that is around here. These are two very talented drivers going at it, very respectfully so, and position conceded. Martin Grady now, the leader of the drivers that have completed their first stop of the race. And what a pass it was. It took 5 or 6 corners to get that pass done, but pass completed as Cody Pride working on Jardier. Speaking of world-class drivers, look at this.
Yeah, and that pass from Grady, the other thing that you don't really see from our broadcast cameras and from where we're sitting, the outside of these corners are littered with all of the sort of the marbles and the rubber that gets flicked off these cars. There is very limited grip out there, so to go all the way around the outside of that McLaren and keep it and still have such a good drive is just, yeah, immense. Plenty of space given by both drivers and really respectful. And yeah, Cody Pride looking now like he's really racy versus Jardier.
Also, don't get lost the 992 of Malinowski, the only other winner this year other than Boothby, who has dominated so much, up into the fourth place position. Top three, of course, still Vanbrugh over Sundstrom, though that gap has started to come in. It was 3.5 at one point, and now it is only 3 seconds. Kalat, who's not that far behind Sundstrom, only 2, and then Malinowski fourth. And this, the battle for fifth place, Jardier and Cody Pride. Piffett was on the back of Jardier earlier than pitted, and now Cody Pride, who was bumped up to sixth place, is now fighting with Jardier for the fifth place position. And, well, how many times have we seen this? Jardier managing to stay in front, not driving ultra defensively, but knowing where to put his Ferrari so that a pass cannot be completed. It can be initiated, but not completed. Very smart and also very respectful driving by these two. Like you would expect anything less, though.
Yeah, and it means that because he's not having to actively defend versus the Porsche of Cody Pride, he's not actually losing that much lap time versus what his best is. So it's kind of the best of both worlds, really. You just about keep the car behind you from being able to fully make a move, and you continue on at your own pace. But as we say that as well, speaking of Porsches, the 100 of Masoudud, he is catching back up as well slowly, lap by lap, as these guys continue to fight it out. He will have that 5-second penalty in a pit stop, which means that he will be demoted back, but he'll be keen to make up some ground to lessen that 5 seconds if at all possible.
Folks, I am not a Porsche driver. I've never been. I've always said that Porsches always drive weird, and they do. They drive completely different than any other race car you've ever driven, no matter how many race cars you have driven. And I was taught by a close friend of mine how to drive a Porsche GT3 car, and it was, oh my goodness, 2 wheels. We're gonna watch that again from the in-car camera. Look at this car, Mr. Bean itself over the corner. 2-wheel stunt driving going on here at the chicanes. But like I was saying, as Masoud is very clearly now in this picture, first thing I was taught about driving a Porsche is, like you said, Ryan, you have to brake later than you've ever braked before, and trust that the car is going to stop. And it is such a weird feeling that unless you do it again and again, you do not get used to, because you have to drive it almost, I would argue, more aggressively than any other car. And that's what all the good Porsche drivers do, such as Cody Pride.
Yeah, the Porsche is really a car that you need to tell it where you want to go. It always requires a little bit of throttle on to keep that nose pointed and under the brakes. I say you've got to be easy on your trail braking, and the inputs is just such a different kind of driving experience from any of the other GT3 cars that I found. I know a couple of immensely fast Porsche drivers, that a couple qualified for the SRO Esports, and when you watch their qualifying lap times in those cars, it was just boggles the mind of how they can do. Cody Pride still going for it, but look at this. Because of that, he's actually got the run on Jardier to the outside, which will give you the inside for the chicane. Can they do it too wide? That is not 2-car wide, but they just about make it, and it looks like he is going to get it.
Oh, and look at him. He slips in there to keep Masoud from going around. And look at this. Around the outside, Jardier, we saw this work earlier for Grady. Could this work for Jardier? I don't know if it will, but they're going to be side by side still. How are they not making contact? Contact right there. Incidental, inconsequential, but Jardier backs off a little bit anyway. and position gain for Cody Pride after going over the bumps, over the curbs. Might as well have been rally racing in that Porsche. You know, Porsche have done a bit of rally cross. And other than that, clean move, excellent racing between two, I don't have a word, legendary sim racers, Cody Pride and Jardier and Massoud in there as well. And by the way, Massoud making the move on Jardier here. Jardier leaving the inside open. Massoud goes through. Perhaps a bit tactical there by Jardier.
Yeah, it would look like it. It's sort of just left the door open because Massoud, with that 5-second penalty, there is no point really sort of having to super be defensive and race that person. You know that the next time that you get to the pits, as long as you keep them within a few seconds, you're going to end up in front of them again anyway, and they will still be carrying around that damage. So all of it is, yeah, I think a bit of a tactical maneuver now, because once again Jardier still sort of under attack. He still can't keep his eyes off the mirror now, because Dornell's in that number 3 Bentley, one of the other sort of Bentley brigades that we've had, slowly catching in the rear view camera as well. Quite a large car to be seeing that in your onboard camera.
Well, I would argue that you can't have a Bentley go side by side with anybody around here, but Martin Grady already went ahead and proved that wrong earlier with that pass on Boothby. So it is possible. A lot of great racing here in the top 10 already, and time has absolutely flown by. We've already went to, 33 minutes in this race, into the 33 minutes into the 2-hour race here at Zolder, the longest race in the GT3 World Championship here on RCI this season. Of course, usually we alternate between 60-minute and 75-minute races, this being the big one, and we're going to whip out the drone camera and show you a little bit of the chicane action. A lot of the teams missing the curb on purpose, but you won't see Cody Pride doing that.
No, and here we go. Here's that train again. 1, 2, and 3.
Cody Pride so far, the only one to go fully over it. Everybody else either clipping the top of the curb, not going on top of it, but clipping the sort of the top of the red and white striped bit, or completely going on to the flat. But Cody Pride, I can guarantee you, if we sit here for another minute, oh, completely missing the turn. Was that Grady there? I think that might have been. I think that was Grady, completely missing the chicane. That will undoubtedly be a track limits warning. You only get 3 of those before you get a penalty, mind you. But if we sit here long enough and Cody Pride comes through, I guarantee you Pride's going to hit that curb again. Big hop there by the Lexus.
Looking at it as well, I think there's been some incident that we didn't catch on camera, because Cody Pride, having gone over the timing split now, is in 10th, and he has just come into the pits.
Oh, you're very right. You're very right. Cody Pride down to 10th place.
Is this a possible
So what has
spin?
happened to Pride here? That was after the chicane where our camera was. So what happens? Nobody around Pride.
The second chicane is quite notorious for unsettling cars as well. But nothing to be seen.
Now, what manner of things has happened to Cody Pride? Keep in mind, Cody was running inside the top 5. So we're forced to believe, Ryan, that this is after the accident. The accident happened in Sector 1.
It must have done, because it wasn't picked up
Or
on our
Sector 3
replay
on
cameras.
the previous lap. Yeah, that's so strange.
Well, we'll have to keep an eye on that. But yeah, Pride into the pits.
Well, Tom Bryant, who is I believe he's our head steward for this championship, and a wealth of information for us for stuff we didn't see, confirming that Cody Pride on the 23rd lap went off in turn 3. So our deduction was correct. It was a Sector 1 incident for Cody Pride.
Yes, and if it's turn 3, that will be just running out. There's quite a vicious curb on the left there where you see one of our cameras is placed, and there's quite the vicious anti-cut. And I think this is it. Will it be that curb that I think? There you go. Those are the anti-cuts. And once you're out there, oh no, it wasn't that corner actually. It was there. There we go.
Oh dear, a
Oh,
major off, and you wonder why the sand pit is that big at the exit of 3. Well, that's why, because when you have a moment, you end up having a big moment. He was halfway to the wind farm.
yeah, so there we go. That was it. It wasn't the apex that I thought, or the outer apex. It was actually the corner after that. Just got on the grass, and that, as we said, with how pointy the Porsche is, that also, as soon as you've unset the balance going off the track, any sort of grip difference, and that car will just spit you out. It does not tolerate such behaviors. And yes, Cody Pride now demoted all the way back down, having served his pit. But as we said, he's now back into the pack of people who have pitted, and is currently 4th in the pack that's pitted. So if you could now get back going and continue those lap times that he was doing before, it's still not over yet.
Right, you are. Didn't hit anything. Did Cody Pride in the 33 Porsche. No damage, just a lot of time lost, but an excellent save to keep that car not only out of the wall, but out of harm's way during the rejoin. And, well, Pride did it once. There's no reason with an undamaged car that they couldn't do it again. And by do it, I mean make up those positions. Jardier will get one of those spots back up to 6th place. But Dornelis here not relenting in any way. And just behind him, I think that's the Ferrari of Hooley in the background of some of these shots. And it is indeed the 28 of Hooley in the background of some of these shots, creeping in to the conversation. It's been absolutely insane, but well spotted by Tom, our steward, and Stewie, our broadcaster. Well caught that incident with Pride. Otherwise, we wouldn't have been none the wiser there. Good job, boys.
Yeah, and you can see now sort of the pace difference that as these cars are starting to burn the fuel and get rid of it, how they're all sort of changing styles. Like we said, Hooley had sort of been quite far back for quite a while. We saw him being passed by Masoud and such, but now that he's not had anyone to battle him, and probably a bit of fuel has been taken out of that car, he's slowly creeping up onto this battle. So it's, some drivers kind of struggle once you put a full fuel load in the car, and other ones are really, their essence is qualifying.
Remember earlier we were looking at the first chicane right there, in fact, with the drone camera, and sort of joked that I felt like Grady would have gotten a track limits warning for jumping that far over the curb. I'm being told that's not the case, that he didn't get a warning for jumping the curb that much. I guess as long as you're on the green runoff patch, I think it might be okay. Pierre Geiner trying to go the long way here around the outside. Can't get it done there. We'll look to the inside. Nothing doing there. Decker's holding the position. But yeah, I guess as long as you're on the green runoff, perhaps it does not matter as much. I would have sworn you had to be inside the cone, but cone doesn't exist anymore. So, you know, maybe ACC is sort of snoozing on that. But position anyway gained for Deckers there. Just a power move, getting onto that short straightaway, getting it done. As all of a sudden, Decker's car looks to be ailing here.
Yeah, the Honda looking like it is sort of struggling in the sort of early stages of this race. He's now got to defend from Alan Bouquet, and now both of these drivers have a 5-second penalty, meaning that even after the pits, they would still be sort of together. So that is a real pass for position. But yeah, I think I was talking to one of the devs once. So if you set an absolute flying lap, and we saw that that Bentley had actually got the fastest lap of the race, then it's a lot more lenient towards you. So that could actually be what's happening with Grady, is that he's set such a flyer now, he's gained no delta on his best time. So it's just a no time gained.
Well, Renato Dornelis absolutely on the back of Jardier still. Very patient here, very calm. A couple of moves not coming off, but clean racing between the two of them. Very fun stuff indeed. Days like today can either make you wish you were watching instead of driving, or make you feel like you wish you were driving rather than watching. I'm very much the latter currently. Side by side, Grady trying to get by Dorsch here in the 193. Keep in mind, Dorsch hasn't done their first pit stop. Around the outside, how many times are we going to see that move come off for a Bentley today? Something about going around the outside. Those Bentleys are absolutely loving it, and Grady's doing it the best. And that is a pass on a car that hasn't done their first stop yet. And Dornelis now getting all sorts of racy with Jardier. And once again, very respectful. Doesn't plow into the corner and hits some of the sausage curves on the way out for good measure. But what a run here. You see Dornelis getting all up in the mirrors, but just runs out of time and real estate to get it done. Well, again, I'd like to be saying I have been doing the math, but I haven't. Our broadcaster, Stewie, has been doing the math, and he reckons, and I've actually now done the math myself, and I think he's right. I think Grady, when everybody cycles through, will be leading this race.
It would not surprise me looking at sort of that pace of Grady. As I says, the problem that he's got now is that that strategy has been working brilliantly for all the people who have pitted so far. But as you mentioned, going around the outside of Dorsch, that is the first car that has not done a pit stop. So he now needs to get through this traffic ahead with minimal time loss. I mean, we have about 16 minutes left till when people will start to normally pit, as we'd say. But that is actually quite a few laps at such a short lap time. So yeah, Grady's got to get by people efficiently if he wants to continue for his strategy to really shine. Jardier taking the Cody Pride line there and bouncing the rear of that Ferrari.
It doesn't work in a Ferrari though, Ryan.
No, and that Bentley once again filling the mirrors, but just runs out of time. You can see though that Bentley, it just looks so much more planted through that chicane. And here we go once again, Martin Grady up the inside of Thomas.
Well, you said it yourself, Ryan. He has to lose minimal time, does Grady, working through this traffic. Well, he's got Thomas and set on to the next one. I think he's got a bit of time to Daldigny. I think it's, actually, I'm not sure. I thought it was about 12 to 15 seconds. It is indeed 16 seconds to the 9th place car. So a bit of a reprieve here, clean running. But all going to plan for Martin Grady as of yet, the 418, who we think will be leading this race. You can run this strategy backwards, though. If you pit at the halfway point, take tires, and then in the final 10 minutes of the race come in and serve your 1 liter stop at the end, it's basically the same thing, but in reverse. And I wonder if maybe Vanbrugh, Sundstrom, Kalat, Malinowski, any of those may be doing that strategy, as I did not think the 193 at Dorsch was going to see Fabian Piffet there, but does at the last possible second. Great awareness by the 193 to see Piffet, and that could have been mega.
Yeah, and both of those guys, Piffet and Boothby, doing the absolute same as Grady. They know that once again they're on this same strategy. They've got to get through this traffic sort of sharpish. But yes, the strategy can work either way, and the way that you mentioned is basically what is seen as the normal way. It sort of really depends where you start in the pack and what sort of exciting things happen on lap 1. If, like I said, sometimes if you're in a battle you don't want to be in, you can pit and run the reverse strategy, or a lot of these drivers I think will just be doing a splash and dash right at the end. And that's why we said that anyone realistically can win this. It now really depends on what happens in the mid-race for Grady and for Vanbrugh. sort of what happens at the front of the track, because it won't be overly long before they eventually start lapping people. So they're going to run into the same problem just one lap ahead.
Yeah, we didn't really talk about that pre-race here, but the other problem with having such a quick lap in such a small track is that on a larger track, you wouldn't usually lap a ton of people in an hour. But here you have a significant portion of the field that are getting into lap down territory, and we are not even an hour into the race, and it's only going to get worse. Head steward Tom Bryant mentions that the 331 of Decker's hit the curb and went into the gravel a lap or so ago as well. That will come as no surprise. That Honda seems to be ailing. I don't know if it's from contact earlier or tire pressure loss. It could be a combination of the two. But either way, that Honda looks a bit wounded.
Yeah, and the Honda now is looking very wounded in the pits as the engineers are sort of brushing all the gravel out of it. Oh, Boothby running very, very wide there. Keeps it on and immediately has to defend from Piffet, who will just as soon as he sees any sort of form to get by Boothby, will take it, but could not pull off the round the outside move like we've seen from the Bentleys. And George Boothby now really needs to get by Thomas and get cracking, because Piffet is all over him. The car that started pole, the car that looked like it was just going to run away in qualifying, is now being held up by this train.
Well, it has been crazy. Look at that dive down the inside. A huge lunging move on Thomas there, and it's going to come off, and they're both going to get through. Perhaps Thomas just allowed that to get clear, not wanting to get involved with that. Very clearly will have known that they're fighting on their own terms and allowing them to go through. You love to see that. You love to see a battle continue. And here we have it. Piffet still with pressure on Boothby. I would lost a ton of time. Last I checked, Boothby was only about 1.5 off of Grady. Well, that whole fight, that 3-car fight between Thomas and Piffet, that lost him about 5 seconds. And that is something we did mention earlier, is that you cannot fight people too long. You cannot go into a battle without having an exit strategy. You cannot waste time, because you lose an absolute ton of it when you are fighting other people on a track that is basically a one-groove racetrack. There's a right line and a wrong line around here. And if you're on that wrong line, you are going to be hemorrhaging time. Well, these two might as well get a room, as they've been together for the majority of this race thus far, Jardier and Dornelis.
And we've seen the right line, and we may as well start calling it the Bentley line as well. We've seen that work quite a few times. I wonder if we might eventually see the number 3 try that. We'll have to get on the radio with his fellow Bentley friends, smashing the curb once again as Jardier. You can see the back end of that Ferrari bouncing all over. The suspension set up quite soft on that one, at least by the looks of it, and closes right back up into the chicane.
Dornelis is one of the few drivers in this race that I don't have too much knowledge on. I know he's Brazilian. I wonder if he speaks English or maybe just Portuguese, but be very interested to, because he has been an absolute star in his own right in some of these races, running really well today. Just the latest one of those inside the top 10. Looks racy. Could have a top 5 car here. Could the Brazilian driver?
It's always great to see as well. We like to obviously see all the regular names you keep seeing over RCI that give us some great racing and some great shows, but it's always sort of quite interesting when a new guy shows up and you have no idea what they can do. And well, here they are, hanging right onto Jardier, which is not really a thing that many people can say they can do. I know I definitely couldn't be anywhere near that close to Jardier.
I beat a lot of people in races that I shouldn't have, but never Jardier, never even once. Well, Malinowski, who might have been in the championship picture had it not been for connection issues this season, who has probably, I would say, the stablest looking connection of the season so far for him. And he even jokes about that in his team name, the I'm a disconnect in a sec team. He's actually going really well. Very quiet race for Malinowski in fourth place. And just an update on the championship as it would be. Keep in mind, Bouquet and Boothby and Piffet are the top three, all fighting for it. It's going to be all for naught as they currently run. Bouquet would lose quite a bit, and Piffet would end up being second in the championship, but would still, as they run currently, still lose out to Boothby in points. Keep in mind, the points gap is near as makes no difference, 100 points between Boothby in first and Piffet in third. But as they run, Piffet would be second and still about 100 points out, even with the qualifying points that he got for qualifying on the pole position. But Malinowski, though, not necessarily in the championship hunt, but the only other driver to win, doing really well. And Martin Grady here, a little earlier than we might have thought.
Yeah, it was
in the pit lane.
Sort of 1:07, but I would suspect that he's started to catch. If you look on our track map, there's quite a big bunch of cars ahead of him. So I would say that that's a tactical pit, as in you're close enough now that you know if you put that little bit of extra fuel in the car, you can make it to the end. And as I said, he's got to make that strategy work with the traffic. So now he's just playing that to the traffic ahead, whereas the leaders have a bit of an easier time. They're out on their own lap, on their own sort of area of the track. They've got it a lot nicer. So we'll see where Grady actually circles out.
Yes, indeed, as the complexity continues, and with that pit, Grady has fulfilled his pit requirements today and will not have to come back to pit lane for the final hour and 6 minutes. But for right now, he will fall back in the field almost to the very end. 18th is where he is going to cycle out, Will Grady. And by the way, this battle hasn't been settled either. You know, some of those Bentleys, including Grady, made passing look easy early in the race, but we know better, don't we, Ryan? Passing here comes at a premium, and case in point, Jardier and Dornelis, and now Boothby and Piffet.
Yeah, you've either got to be committed and know where your car is strong versus the car that you're racing, or they need to make a mistake. You need to pressure them into that. But a lot of times, if you have two top-rate drivers in two of the most competitive cars in a season, really, that can be incredibly hard. You know, you've just got to wait for maybe a mistake that will never come. Or each time we sort of see the Lexus strong points, it seems to be, you know, the acceleration zones and clattering the curbs, as the mid-engine cars are a little bit more sort of sketchy to do so. In that you can see Boothby avoiding them in his 720S, the mid-engined. But then it just gets to the corners and the 720 starts slowly scuttling away from the front engine car, which is that little bit more understeery.
It's what's so great about GT racing, though, isn't it? That we have different displacements, different weights, BOP to make sure that the racing is fair and equal as it can possibly be. And then you go into the race and you may have an advantage on a straight due to displacement or engine orientation, but someone else may have a advantage in the corners or potentially on the curbs, depending on how the car is set up and where the engine is. It's absolutely brilliant. It's why GT racing, outside of Formula One, obviously, is the most popular racing. In fact, you could argue that GT racing is even more so because there's more of it. There's more demand for GT racing, not just GT3, GT2, GT4, and even some Ginetta GT5 action. There's more demand for that. So it's lovely. It's lovely that you can be a customer team and go out and compete anywhere in the world on any given weekend in one of these fine machines.
Yeah, and a lot of the times you can be a team with basically, you don't have to be a factory team with just millions and millions of dollars to spend. We've seen it before where, you know, AM teams have come, competed and won. I mean, the famous one that I'll always remember, 2015 Bathurst. That car was won by an AM category car that was
It was
the
indeed.
GTR, and that was the GT Sport Academy car. So it's not up to who has the most money. It's up to the balance of performance and who has the best drivers. And like we're seeing that today, who is the best driver and who dares so far is winning.
Masoud into the pit lane. First of the 2 pit stops required by Masoud, no doubt will serve the penalty. The 5 seconds added on for the contact. Remember, he was running third and had contact with Fabian Piffet. Speaking of, Piffet still behind Boothby here. And fun fact about that, Mawson, I was a big Gran Turismo player back in the day and participated in several of those GT academies. And there was actually an article a few weeks before that, because that was a big deal, the GT Academy team taking on the Bathurst race there. And there was an article by a reputable motorsports publication who said that that was nothing more than a PR stunt for Nissan and PlayStation. And they go out there and they win that race, and they took down that article.
Yeah, a lot of people didn't actually believe back then that sim racing was anything, or that simulators were just not the way. The old-timey way to do it was you had test days and you took your drivers out and that's what you did. But really, in recent years, has been shown that that's not the way. And my sort of favorite thing with that is that 2015 car, I now know where it resides, because a good friend of mine owns that car and runs it in British GT, where he runs it in Brit Car.
Yes, indeed. I've seen pictures that you have you hanging out with your friend that owns that car, and it's lovely to see Godzilla back. And it takes you back in time. It was only 6 years ago that, but beside the point, it does take you back, and I love to see that car. Now, cars. Here we go on the soapbox. Cars are lovely, lovely mechanical things. And they're meant to be driven, aren't they? They're not meant to be looked at in a sterile environment. They're meant to be used, and to know that that car is in a loving home and at home with a petrol head who uses that car for what it's meant to do, and is still getting podiums apparently, is fantastic. It was lovely to see that car.
Yeah, I always really like the look of them. You know, especially right at the end of seasons, you see the pictures and Le Mans cars and endurance cars and the GT cars, like, you know, after they've done the 24 hours of Spa with the GT World, and you see the cars are all covered in rubber and dirt and a couple of scratches, dings, you know, that piece of machinery has somehow been plowing around at full speed for 24 hours around the same track. It's just really, it's one of my favorite forms of motorsport, is endurance racing. And, you know, be it long or short ones, even such 2-hour races like this, it puts immense strain on the drivers. You know, you've got to be full concentration mode for 2 hours. And that's another one of our front runners in, Malnavsky, to take his first of the mandatory stops, dipping in from P4.
Well, Malinowski into the pit lane. I was actually looking at Kalat in third place, who has caught up to Mikhail Sundstrom for second place. And that is certainly going to be a battle that will manifest here shortly. George Boothby running in the 8th place position. Once again, your championship points leader as we reach the halfway point in the race. Folks at home, if you enjoy GT3 racing, if you are enjoying today's broadcast, why not like, subscribe, and hit the bell? We'll be back with you. Literally, Ryan and I will be back with you tomorrow night for some more Night Owl action. It's been a crazy Night Owl season, and we'll get you up to date on everything that has happened tomorrow night. So why not subscribe and join us? We'd absolutely love to have you. We hope that you're enjoying your Friday evening, and we thank you for spending it with us. And we also would like to thank all of our partners here at RCI that make this race and every race possible. Race Department, AK Informatica, Raceface Speed Labs, Sim Racing GP, and Driver 61. More information about those awesome partners in the description, and of course our Discord link is also there. You don't just have to watch, you can join us and drive as well. We have splits from all the way from esports pros and aliens to just starting out true amateur seasons as well, and we would love to have you. Join with the link in the description to get started, and we hope to see you on a track very soon indeed. Pit stops cycling through here. For some, the second stops, such as Grady and Pride, and for others like Malinowski, the first stops just getting underway. I'm surprised it wasn't a mad dash to the pit lane at the halfway mark, Ryan.
Yeah, there's a couple of teams that appear to be running it long. As I sort of theorized, though, if we look, that pack of Bentleys out in front, so far they show no signs of really slowing down, and their pace is picking up, as we says. Collot sort of catching up to the back of Sundstrom, and as I say, that Vanberg just completely throws it out the window for me. So there you go. Vanberg, the leader, in for his mandatory stop, so that is sort of the first of the cycle through, which I think will probably be some tyres, some fuel, and get going. So Mikhail Sundstrom in the 899 now takes the reins of the race. We'll see where Boothby comes out as he's racing round now, trying to catch that Bentley in the pit stop.
Yes, indeed. Just seeing some of the cars continue to cycle through on the pit lane. And just watching chat as we always do. Folks at home, if you have any questions for us regarding, well, ACC racing in general, or just general questions about, you know, what maybe you want to know what Ryan Mawson's favorite color is, as George Boothby is in. Well, this will be interesting to pay attention to. But if you have any questions, I am actually curious what your favorite color is, Ryan. But we had a question come in about asking, does anybody name their cars? Feel free to answer in chat, folks. I do name my cars, not all of them, but most of them get names, usually female names. I don't know what that says about me, though.
Well, one of mine is actually named, and the other two don't have a name. But so my sort of classic car, my 1969 Volvo 144S, that came with the name from the prior owner, which I am the second owner of that car from brand new. And she came with the name Olga, because the registration plate is OLG 899 Hitch. And it's a Swedish car, therefore Olga. So we always say, it's never, are we going out in the 940 or the 7, it's, are we going for a ride in Olga? And the big twitch from Collot there, that is that curb that I mentioned. You can't really go near. It's a lot more vicious than you think. You can see you run over it and it just high sides the car. Did well to keep that.
Yeah, indeed. For a second there, I thought that Collot was just trying to be a bit cordial to the Porsche there, because obviously a little bit of pace discrepancy, old tires versus new. And turns out I don't think that was the case. I just think a little bit too much over the curb. And, well, either way, cordial either way, but a bit of a move. That'll wake up Hugo Collot for the Race Esports team. And they are leading right now. Everybody else in front of them has pitted. And there are just a handful of cars that haven't done one stop. Collot, Dornelis, Daldigny, and Dorsch, I think, are the only cars, unless my eyes deceive me, that have not made their stop. Our broadcaster at this point, oh my goodness, oh, that probably wasn't as close as it looked, but on our camera, it looked frightening. Let's see how close that actually was. Yes, and it wasn't that close. But on that camera, that made everybody withdraw. Our broadcaster is 100% convinced that Martin Grady will be leading this race after everything cycles out, meaning everybody has completed all of their mandatory stops. And I'm not 100%, but I am 97% sure that that is the case. So I'm siding with Stewie on this one.
I'm sure a few more percent can be added as the race goes on. Having been watching sort of on my other screen the general lap times that Bentley has been running, it really it really wouldn't surprise me if Grady is leading. Been putting in some monumental lap times, especially for what I assume is a full fuel car.
Fabian Piffet here in another battle. And by the way, I drive an old Audi, and her name is Alice, by the way. I never actually answered that question, but my old Audi's name is Alice.
Yeah, I don't have a name for my other two cars. They're just, well, oh, and actually, as we come back to it, Pivot with a big slide, a mistake into the second chicane, possibly. And there we go. The rear end starting to get loose, and
Oh,
with the bumps, just couldn't hold it. Just about keeps it pointing the right direction, though. But yeah, a big moment there, which will have dropped him way behind Boothby.
well, that's not what you want to see. Pivot there, trying as hard as you may to get back to the front. That will do nothing but hinder his efforts, as now he has to repass several cars and, of course, catch back up to Boothby, who he has been stuck behind for the better part of 30 minutes.
Yeah, and now you've actually got one of the Bentleys. That Bentley, I think, is that which Bentley is that? I can't actually see on my timing screens. That's Darnell's. There we go. So that's the number 3, who has still got 2 stops to do, and now is 1 lap ahead. So it's that moment now for Darnell's. Do you let Pivot by because you know that he has the potential to be much faster? But he's trying to make his strategy work to get ahead of Jardier. So, you know, it's a rock and a hard place, really.
Yeah, this is the point in the race where, well, what's that old saying? You've made your bed and now you have to lie in it. Kalot did come into the pit lane, dropped them all the way, or only down to 4th, I should say. Dornelis now in the 3 Bentley leading the field. Dorsch in, so that will mean our leader Dornelis in the Vacuum Racing Bentley will be the last one to pit. And of course, Dornelis is the one in front of Mr. Pivot. So we'll see if he comes in here. I would suspect he is going to, but he isn't. In fact, he's going around another time with 2 stops left. What is the Brazilian driver's strategy here? I'm gonna have to recalculate this one.
I mean, the only thing I can think of is that they really either put more fuel than they anticipated for where they were in the grid, or they're trying to do a full tank. You know, they've done a full tank run and then are going to only put a light amount of fuel in, which means that you'll have a shorter stop and a lighter car towards the end. It means then you can do much more towards your qualifying times than, say, just splitting the race 50-50 and your pace will sort of even out. It might be that this car actually gets faster in the second half of the race. But as he says, he's now got Pivot right behind, and it's just that situation now. Do you let them go? Because if they hold you up, you're now losing time to Jardier and everyone who's pitted already that he's trying to run away from.
Well, a day that started on the most positive of notes, starting to look a bit more like a nightmare for Fabian Pivot. Not what they wanted after a exemplary qualifying effort. It hasn't turned out to be the day that he reckoned it could be. But yes, Dornelis now in the pit lane. And this is going to be interesting because it isn't too far out. We had cars pit with 1 hour and 6 minutes, and now it's 50 minutes left. So that will complete that pit cycle from 1 hour 6 to 50. So 16 minutes of pit window for what we assumed would be the normal stop. Everybody has come into pit lane during that time. The 331 of Deckers, by the way, who was sitting in the pit lane for quite some time. Well, the garage door has come down, and the 331 Honda has officially retired. 19 cars left. Jordan Sones, by the way, is in the 239, and they've been sitting in the pit lane for a very long time, has Jordan Sones.
Yeah, it looks like possibly that they've also parked the car. We've seen Sones involved in a couple of the early accidents. It might have been one that we've not caught on our camera. And Jardier looking like he might actually overtake the Bentley again, the number 3, going racing down the start-finish line. The Bentley's off the jacks and down the pit straight. But will he now get round the bottom of the sort of the up-to-speed pit exit around turn 1 before Jardier gets there? And I believe he hasn't, looking at the relative. as he comes into shots.
Yeah, he hasn't done it. Jardier's gone about 3 seconds up the road.
There he is, just about. Yeah, Jardier's gone. He has managed to keep in front of Hooley, though, which was another car that was right behind in this sort of battle. But now he's got to try ease those tires in while also defending from Hooley, which is a lot easier said than done because Hooley's now has been going round a few laps.
Oh, baby!
And
That's not good.
That will not help your run out of that corner.
Oh boy, that was looking at pure sky there. We saw that in practice and qualifying, and now we've seen that in the race. Just pure NHRA drag strip action there with the car lifting off of its front wheels. Absolutely incredible stuff. Lost that position to Hooley now. Question in chat. Glimmeril asks, is the Bentley OP here perhaps? And I think that's a valid question at this point. I'm not too sure. I've never driven the Bentley here, but it's certainly looking like one of the better options.
Whoa. I believe, yes, the Bentley is one of the better cars here. For a while ago, it was actually slightly nerfed. So, yeah, I believe that it was deemed slightly too quick here, and it did have a slight bop change. And Darnell's back in the pits, so now he could be actually getting rid of his final mandatory, just wanting to sort of get out of that battle with Hooley.
Now I feel like this was his strategy all along, and this is interesting. Double pitting in the middle of the race. That's an interesting one. So inevitably here, folks, what we're going to see are all the different strategies that you could feasibly pull off. We saw the early pitters. You're inevitably going to see a very late pitter, and the strategy of pitting all of your stops in the middle of the race. Now that's interesting, and we'll have to see how all that shakes out. Well, you know what has shaken out is Mikael Sundstrom has shaken out in front of our previous leader. Here is the nearly on-pace Bentley in front of Vanbrugh to the tune of, well, only about half a second, because there he is to Bentley's. Well, how did Mikael Sundstrom do that? Easy. 15 seconds quicker in the pit lane. So that tells you that Sundstrom did not take as much fuel as Vanbrugh did, which might explain how Vanbrugh was so fast in that first sector or segment over Sundstrom. He had gapped him to about 5 seconds, had Vanbrugh over Sundstrom. So perhaps a bit extra fuel, but now the pendulum has swung the opposite direction now.
Yeah, it's either that or it could have been that Sundstrom hasn't actually taken tires, because as much as a tire stop is 30 seconds, if you're putting fuel in the car, if you're putting, 60 odd liters, it'll probably still be 10, 15 seconds by the time you've got off the jacks. So I think maybe Sundstrom has actually sort of traded maybe a bit of late race pace for track position. But as we've seen it happen, if you've got two drivers who really know how to defend, it is very, very tricky to get round here. And looking at it, though, Vanbrugh is all over Sundstrom.
Well, Albin Bouquet, who has had an adventurous race to say the least, has been the first victim of the drive-through penalties, and that awarded by ACC, not our stewards, as Mikael Sundstrom allowing Vanbrugh to have the outside into the first chicane, and expertly done. But Bouquet has come down pit lane, drove through, and returned back on the racetrack. We have 18 cars still circulating. Jordan Sones, 19th, is sitting in the pit lane. Mikael Sundstrom leads over Vanbrugh, and Collat is your top three currently, but they all have a pit stop left to do. So does Malinowski, Massoud, and Jardier. Grady in 7th place, who we think has the right strategy to win this race, has completed all of their stops and has done for a while. And it is all about not losing time and making sure that they take care of their 4:18 Bentley to the finish of the race. Question from chat asked, what is the delta for a stop and go pit stop where you only have to take 1 liter of fuel? It's about 47 seconds. It's anywhere from 47 to 50 seconds is the rough estimate on how long it takes you to get down to the pit lane speed at the entrance to the time you trip the line at the exit. So about 47 seconds. With tires or extra fuel, it runs you about 1:08 to 1:10 is what it will normally run you. So a splash and go, about 47 seconds. So the early stops, some of the teams like Boothby did 47 seconds on their stops. And that indicated to me that they took an liter of fuel and got back out there. But on these most recent stops, everybody had been in the 1 minute bracket. 1:08, 1:10, 1:14, somewhere in there. I hope that illuminates exactly. Ooh, it's contact there. Dornelis in the hot dog in the middle of the bun there. But I hope that illuminates what the pit delta can be versus what it usually is. If they were doing a stop and drop, as we call it in America, it could be under a minute.
Yeah, now the other thing as well, with Sundstrom and Vanbrugh actually battling up ahead, that's kind of everything that Grady needs, because looking on the delta for him, he's just in his own little world. He's got about 6 seconds to Jardier, who still does have another pit stop to go. And yeah, these two are battling it out something fierce. And as I says, I don't think that Mikael Sundstrom took tires, because you can see the 19 of Vanbrugh is all over him. And as it says, traded some pace for track position. And so far, it's actually working out for him, because every single time that Vanbrugh wants to make a move, Mikael is just there with the car defending. You can't get around that.
Okay, we've made a lot of comments about it's hard to pass here, and apparently not for a Bentley, though. But is the track 2 Bentleys wide? I think we're about to get our answer in the form of a Sundstrom Vanbrugh side-by-side battle here.
It would look that way, and I mean, look in the background, not overly far away, around about 3 seconds from the back of him is Kalot, who will just be watching this from a great distance, thinking this is exactly what I need to bring me back into the podium fight as well.
Very close racing. I think you are very right. As down the inside is Vanbrugh trying to get the cut move done. It's going to be contact. It's going to force Sundstrom off into the dirt in turn 1. Sundstrom will not appreciate that, as there's a car. Is that Cody Pride? I think that is Cody Pride. PPR Esports Cody Pride off in between 1 and 2. Was this a dip of a tire off into the grass, I wonder? Doesn't look like it. Just lost it, Ryan.
Yeah, it just looked like the rear end under weight transfer, like we said with the Porsche. That's the other thing, once the fuel starts running down, and if you don't take tires and the grip starts running down, it becomes very much a handful very quickly. It's very hard to control that car. Still doing the full rallycross setup though. And there we go, that we mentioned earlier when you said that Grady had got away with that move. The ACC gods were not so kind to Cody Pride.
People making fun of me being American in chat, very funny. We don't actually call them straightaways. Straightaways is not a racing term, necessarily speaking, of course. If you're referencing stock car racing, it is called a straight or a tri-oval or a dog leg or a back straight. It's not called a straightaway. Straightaway refers to a straight portion of road in general. But I get what you mean. But you know, you may have noticed this, Ryan, by now, but I am from the rural South in the U.S., and we have weird words for things.
Yeah, but I mean, I can't really talk either because I'm from that place in England called Yorkshire, where we sort of cut out half of the language because there's far too many letters in like the, so you shorten it to t, go into shop, or all sorts of words like that. Or if you were my granddad who used to talk in really old Yorkshire, anyone else would think that this man was talking alien. Because if he would be talking to me, for example, and I'd just been to work, he would ask me, "Have you addled some brass, my lad?" Addle
Oh
means to
yeah.
earn some brass money. Have you addled some brass? And it's like
Oh
anyone
dear.
else would think that we are aliens, but this is such the world we live in.
I love the Yorkshire accent. It's one of my favorite ones. I think it's because it's very similar to some of the Southern accent variants. So it almost feels like home, despite the fact that well, you're in the middle of England and it's going to be contact between Geiner, and that is not going to be how they drew that up. As William Dorsch for RT93 Esports just sort of got moved out of the way for that pass right there.
Yeah, that was the Bentley, just straight up the inside and unceremoniously deposited the poor Aston Martin in the gravel trap. So I have a feeling that our live stewards have actually had quite a calm race, really. So they'll have something to do now. They'll be all over that.
We Yeah, they absolutely will. I heard that they were ordering a pizza and mixing adult beverages in there. They were so not busy, and more power to them. I mean, they usually get absolutely swamped. So, especially in a long race like this, it is nice that they have a moment to take a breather. But back to our accent comment. Yeah, we have a lot of weird words in the U.S. for things. Um, I can't think of any off the top of my head, of course, but look at the flashing. That's Hugo Collat's lights reflecting off the back of Mikhail Sundstrom's Bentley, and that's the transmission of Mikhail Sundstrom's car as we ride on the front splitter of Hugo Collat. And the flashing of the lights to me would indicate that Collat would very much like second place back.
Yeah, and looking at that, as we said, I think the 899 just sort of fading a little bit, struggling for grip versus the drivers who have now taken tyres, the 19 and the 114, looking at their pit delta, obviously having longer stops, but it seems to be quicker in the long run. Not quicker though if you run on the gravel. You can see how much that that affects you down that straight. As Jesse said, you run off the track and it is just like hitting a barrier. But Collat catching right back up in the corners. So I have a feeling that we might again once see a two Bentley wide moment. I don't think that Collat is going to be happy sitting behind the 899 for an extended time.
Well, Vanber's loving this because this is letting him get away, and we don't know how important that's going to be. We're 90. I'm still at 9. I'm at 98% now. For those of you keeping track at home, I'm 98%. Martin Grady has the right strategy and is not leading obviously as they run, but will be once the final mandatory pit stops have been completed. So I've upgraded at 1% in the last 15 minutes. It's looking more and more likely, but that will not deter Vanber, Sundstrom, and Collat, who are all fighting for podium positions here. No small feat.
No, and as we can see as well, speaking of people who's kind of in this front pack battle, but just a bit like Bluetooth, they're just a while away. Grady is slowly catching up to Jardier. The gap was around about 7 seconds the last time I had a look, and it's now all the way down to 4 seconds. So Grady making great strides in that, but if he catches up to Jardier, he's got to have the same problem again. He can't afford to hang around behind the back of Jardier, because if he does, he might just lose the win of this race that he's been reeling in from basically almost 2 hours ago.
The wherewithal this is not a situation that any of these drivers would have been familiar with. A 2-hour race with 2 mandatory stops with only a liter of fuel required. No tire stop required, but you assume you will have to take tires at some point because 2 hours on one set of tires is a bit torturous in some cases, especially for some cars, namely the Porsche. So this is not a scenario that most of these drivers, despite the fact that they're elite esports drivers, all of them, it wouldn't be something that they're used to. So to have that strategy for Grady, that would have to be something that they drew up from scratch. And you have, for Grady specifically, and Boothby, because they did the same thing, you have to commit to that early in the first 10 minutes of the race because they both pitted at the end of lap 2. So they committed to that immediately. That's absolutely incredible.
Yeah, they obviously had much more of an idea than what we had. I know a lot of these drivers, a lot of these teams will actually sort of sit and calculate what is the best and use average lap times. Yeah, I've had it in league races before where I've been up against people who have full on spreadsheets and math calculations and everything of what is the optimum pit and everything. And I mean, like you've said before, Jesse, I'll just quite happily tell people what my strategy is because most times I just work it out on the fly. Like when we've done the charity race, it's like, what is your strategy? Yes. My strategy is yes, and we will see where we come out.
My favorite thing from this championship so far, Ryan, was talking to George Boothby after his Nürburgring race. He took the lead with 1 minute to go after playing strategy all race long, and I asked him in the victory lane interview, George, when did you know you had the right strategy or could win this race? He said, with a minute to go when I took the lead. I had no idea before then. That's how committed you have to be. You know, even right or wrong, you have to double down on what you set out to do. And that is what you're seeing here. And of course, looks like Grady is going to get up into 6th place, passing Massoud. So that was absolutely necessary for Grady to do. Up to 6th overall, now puts Massoud back down to 7th with still a pit stop to do. As something happens here with Kalat and Sundstrom. Look at the weaving back and forth. And another touch and a big old touch. Mikael Sundstrom will not be moved.
No, it's still that almighty Bentley just parked in the middle of the track. And yeah, getting quite touchy-feely now. You can really see the difference on those tires now. You know, almost an hour and a half on the same set of tires around here. It's going to be really hell on them as Massoud comes in for his final, what will likely be a stop and drop and back out. So we'll see when he filters out who is actually going to be battling. Looking at the deltas, it might be around about maybe 13th place, 14th, once he's stopped, dropped, and got out of the bottom of the pit. But actually, looking at it, that is definitely not a stop and drop.
Definitely taking tires, extra fuel, something there on Massoud's car. Meanwhile, Hugo Kalat still trying to get this pass done. And the latest entry into this battle here is there going to be more contact. You know there is. And Mikael Sundstrom will not be happy that he has to replace the bumper on that Bentley. But despite that fact, is not wavering at all. You got to respect that. And you have to assume Mikael Sundstrom has not gotten new tires to this point. I have thought of some weird North American race lingo. And wrap your mind around this, folks at home. I just realized we don't call it a pit straight. That's not a thing here. I never heard that until I started watching international motorsport. The straight away now. Work with me here, folks. The straight that has the pit lane on it is always called the front straight. Why is that a problem? Well, sometimes in America on racetracks, the pit lane is not on the front straight. So even if it's on the back straight, it's still the front straight because it's the one that has the pit lane on it. Does that make any sense?
That would really confuse people, especially if you took it to the likes of Silverstone, where you have two pits. You have the old pit and the new pit.
Yeah. So there are racetracks here in the U.S., Ryan, that have that. They have two pits, and by the way, we don't call them pit lanes; they're just pits. And also, the winner's circle is always victory lane, no matter what. And there's no, even though there is a podium, it's not called that. It's still victory lane. So there's some weird American race car or motorsport things that would not make sense to anybody else. The 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 pit straight is always the one that has pit lane on it, and that's the front straight, even when it's the back straight. Even if it's not on a straight, which sometimes it isn't, that is what it is. Sometimes we call if another weird thing, I don't know if this works very well, but sometimes if there is a kink in the front straight, that is called the front stretch at that point, which makes no sense. Anyway, this has been America Not Making Sense, starring me, and we're gonna move on from that.
It would mean that Road Atlanta would make much more sense, because depending on who numbers that track, the amount of corner numbers change depending on who makes the track map. And Hugo Collot right up to the back of Sundstrom again, looking very, very sort of touchy-feely. And as he says, a couple of bits of broken carbon fiber might be on the 899. And actually, Hugo Collot actually diving in there, opting to get rid of his last mandatory stop, has decided that fighting that hard with Sundstrom, he's not going to be moved. He will not be easily defeated. Hugo Collot now in what is most likely going to be a stop, drop, and run your best laps possible, so that then he comes out ahead of Sundstrom, who was just looking like a force to be reckoned with.
Yeah, I don't hate that call. Hugo Collot coming in, trying to get that second place. For all we know, this could be for second or third on the overall podium at the end of the day. Fine fellow in chat pointing out that it's often called in America a pit road, never a pit lane. That is correct. I think in oval racing, it's just pit road or the pits. The pits actually sometimes in America, by the way, refers to the garage. Sometimes, not as looks like Collot may be able to work this strategy. But yes, pit road, never pit lane. It is a separate road, according to us Americans. Hugo Collot coming out into the 6th place position. Now that's interesting, because that is actually, yes, that's interesting because that's in front of Boothby now. And that will be the position that they want. Mikael Sundstrom now has a slight reprieve with Malinowski adrift and a Lamborghini in between the two of them. Martin Grady, though, the man that we're all watching. Tidgney Racing. I don't know if they're called Tidgney Racing. I just call them that. But either way, Martin Grady in 5th place. Trying to get around Jardier, not the easiest of tasks. Few people have been able to do that today.
Yeah, and looking at it, if everything is sort of to be shaping out, I mean, Hugo Collot, we saw he did a stop and drop, and he is actually quite a way behind Grady, just slightly ahead of Boothby. So with the few in front still yet to pit, I mean, obviously he's going to slingshot Jardier. It might actually be within that P1 spot. It's now, how much time will he lose around Jardier? Or will we see Jardier pull over and let him by, as he did with a car earlier? Because now it's sort of, you don't have to. It is entirely your right to fight the driver if you see it fit.
Oh, this could be big for Grady here, as it is going to be a move out of the way. You absolutely called it. That was sportsmanlike driving from Jardier, who is clearly thinking about his own race in the bigger picture here today, letting Grady through. Now, that could have been potentially disastrous for Grady had Jardier thought, well, I'm going to race you as hard as I possibly can. But Jards knows that they have an additional pit stop. That's not their fight. Their fight comes from somewhere else in the field.
Yeah, always one that is a great tactical driver is Jardier, and yeah, realizes there is no point battling any of this. I'm just going to lose time to the people up ahead. It's not my strategy. Puts the indicator on and lets Grady by, which now unleashes him and Messard versus that is Macaulay. A slight mistake, and that will promote them up. 23 minutes to go now. So can Macaulay get that place back?
Oh dear, we got some penalties coming in, one of which is by ACC, not our stewards. Daldigny in the 26 Porsche has run afoul of the track limits one too many times. Drive-through penalty for the 26, and Giner in the 7 has got a 5-second penalty for a forceful overtake with position not returned. Here it is on the replay, and we saw it live. And he did knock him the right way, did Pierre Giner. But William Dorsch will not be enthused either way about being removed from the position.
No, exactly. So even if you end up spinning someone, the place wasn't returned. So as such, that's the penalty you get. We also have the 26 serving a drive-through. Now, was that another track limits warning? It might have been the second.
Indeed. A lot of talk in the chat applauding that move by Jardier there. And a lot of you using the language of legend. And, well, quite frankly, I can't think of a better way to describe him. He is a legend in sim racing, isn't he, Jardier? He's done so much for sim racing, and nobody enjoys their time in their simulator more than him.
Oh, anytime you tune into his streams, this man just never ceases to amaze me. How much happiness he can have, even when I've watched races with him where it's all gone sort of pear-shaped, and they've had incidents, the strategy has not worked, or etc. And he's still with the biggest smile on his face saying, "Don't worry, lads, it's fine. We will just continue." And it is so hard sometimes to have that mentality all the time, even when it's not going your way. But always a pleasure to watch, and always a pleasure to have around RCI, really.
Not to say Jardier doesn't ever get angry or worked up about things, but he has such a happy disposition. I've seen that man have terrible races where it's just it would make me miserable, but even still, the ultimate sportsman he is in post-race chats, congratulating winners, apologizing if need be, and just being a class act, as they're going to be side by side, Boothby and Kalat. Now, this could be very important here at the end. This is for position, a straight-up fight between the two of them. This could be, will likely be, a top 5 fight at the end. And George Boothby trying everything he can now to get a piece of Kalat.
He's going to try for the undercut. Looks like he has actually got it using using the inertia that he had and slingshotted by the Bentley. He's now going to hold it coming into that chicane, because the Bentley will now have the toe, thinking about a move, but obviously there is basically one line through this chicane. But we have seen the Bentley actually pass Boothby, getting a better run out here, but this time it looks not to be. Bentley being that slight bit more cautious. Boothby holds the position, and now look who's also joining in the battle.
Yes, indeed. Fabian Piffet has had an adventure of a day. How crazy would it be for Piffet to still finish inside the top 5 after the adventure that it has been? Crashed, not of his making, and then a spin of his own later in the race. Well, it would be immense if that was still in the cards. But now Piffet has to get by Kalat. And by the way, folks at home, if you are wondering, I am now 99.9% sure Martin Grady has won this race. Even though we have 20 minutes to go, I'm 99.9% sure Grady has nailed this strategy and the pace, and will not even have a fight from Vanbrugh, Sundstrom, and Malinowski in front, as Grady now up into the 4th place position as we continue to watch Kalot fight against Piffet. Fantastic fight. There's been, it's such a difficult track, Ryan. There's been so much respectful and exciting side-by-side racing at a track that does not lend itself to such things.
No, and this has been 2 hours later. All these drivers have been rocking around that long. And in shot, we have 3 different cars. And here we go. This could be the change for the lead. This is being our leader, Julian Vanbrugh. He's in for his final mandatory, which will probably be a stop and drop. But you can look on the relative there. We can see Martin Grady, that 418 car, just closing in, and he's not even made it to his box yet.
Yeah, it goes to show you, you never know what the right strategy may be, but this one is going to be one that drops Julian Vanbrugh down the order by quite some margin. Now, keep in mind, the cars that still have a pit stop, not important, but the one there, Grady going through, that is the important one. And there goes Grady, and there goes the 19 out of the pit lane. In this battle right here, oh, contact! Hugo Kalot gets a little sideways and contact with Fabian Piffet. Kalot goes out into the dirt, recovers it, and that was a scary moment. I don't think that was Piffet's fault.
No, it looks like
look at this.
Let's have a look. No, the bet.
The server crashed. The voice thing crashed. So we need to switch. Well, that was an interesting 5 seconds there. Did you miss us, Ryan? We had to switch over very quickly and move all of our equipment over to a different box. I don't know if maybe did they have squirrels around here?
Who trod on it?
Yeah, it's almost like somebody kicked the cable out of the wall. We do apologize, everybody at home. We are back with you now in vision and sound, and we come bearing a replay. Our man Thomas here. Oh, a little bit of contact there, but accident avoided between the two Astons here. Valkyrie Esports driver.
Yeah, that was a case of 2 Astons don't go into one chicane very, very close and just sort of sneaking across the front of each other.
Well, the 19 received a penalty, and this is why the pass on Mikhail Sundstrom that forced Sundstrom into the dirt, deemed a forceful overtake. And indeed, 5-second penalty for 19, forceful overtake position not returned. And of course, a 5-second penalty for number 7 minor contact that was avoidable. They also received a second warning that was converted into a 5-second penalty. So that normally would be a warning, this contact here, folks. That would normally be a warning, but since it was a second one, that is upgraded to a 5-second penalty.
Yeah, so now carrying around a 10-second penalty is that Bentley. And here's one of the last front runners to be pitting, Malinowski, for the 992. Obviously, the I'm a disconnect in a sec has not had that fade today. But like I said, very, very stable connection to his last stop and drop. But as you can see on the relative, all those Grady has flown by. Looks like Jardia Boothby, possibly even Piffett, is going to get that three-way battle just passing the other side of the pit wall before Malinowski's got back. So that battle sort of leaving him away.
Well, coming down to the wire here, Malinowski coming out of the pit lane, Jardier doing their final stop, 50 kilometers to the line, and then past that, this whole sweeping left-hander outside of turn 1 to pick up the speed. Must stay inside those white lines at least until you get halfway through turn 2. As demonstrated there by Jardier, and now Mikael Sundstrom, the final car into the pit lane. And I can only imagine Sundstrom is going to change tires here. There's no way you would go 2 hours on one set of tires here, would you? Like, there's no way, right?
I think there is. I think there is a yes way with Mikael Sundstrom. I mean, look, you got 12 minutes left. Kind of, you made it this far, you may as well go the full way. Has it been their faster strategy though? Looking at the sort of time now, you can see Vanbrugh flying by the other side of that pit lane, and eventually Collot, who he was battling with fiercely. I think no, actually, that's been the slower strategy.
Well, it hasn't worked for Mikael Sundstrom, 5th right now. Could be a bit worse here in just a moment. Will Malinowski get by? That's the question. As certainly won't. Malinowski there in the pink Porsche. It's going to be very close. Malinowski goes down to the inside. This is for 5th place. Malinowski trying to get side by side, trying to maintain position, has the inside. Can the Bentley hold on the outside again? No, it cannot. And Malinowski on the warmer tires comes through and takes the 5th place position, but not to be outdone. Sundstrom has a look, but can't make the move. Sundstrom down to 6th place. Malinowski up to 5th. Piffett in 4th place, right behind about a second on Boothby, who is 3rd. Vanbrugh, who has that 5-second penalty from the contact with Sundstrom earlier, is 8 seconds in front of Boothby in 2nd. And as we've been saying all race long, Stewie has been saying since the first 15 minutes of this race, our broadcaster, he thought Grady was going to win this race. And so have a lot of you in chat. So very smart are you chatters and our broadcaster as well. Grady with a 8-second lead, but it's actually 5 seconds longer than that. And technically speaking, Boothby is only 3 seconds behind Vanbrugh, if you want to account for that penalty that will be added on to the end time. So really all Boothby has to do is gain 3 seconds, and Boothby will be 2nd. And that would be what he's working on. Be the same thing for Piffett too, I reckon, right?
Yeah, well, that's now kind of the point of that, is that Boothby and Piffett both have the ability to gain places here. It depends if those two want to fight, or if they realize that if they work together, they can both get a position there. We'll have to keep an eye on what it is. It is still coming down. Look, this lap around is now a 7.8 second. So, and it was just over an 8 last time we went round. Not a lot of time. So if you want that 2nd place, you got to get a shuffle on.
Folks, I'm not going to say I'm surprised, because I'm not. And if you are new to RCI racing, this is normal. final 10 minutes of the race, everything flipped on its head, and you're not quite sure where your favorite driver is going to finish, unless you are a Martin Grady fan and a Tidgney fan. Then maybe you know where you're going to finish, but you still have to run the laps. It's only an 8-second gap, well, +5, etc., so forth. But for our podium positions, we're not quite sure where we are. Mikael Sundstrom, who was the last car to pit, everybody has pitted. I can't tell you the garage door for Jordan Sones has come down. So Sones will finish 19th. Cody Pride, who is several laps off the pace now, in 18th, is the last running car tonight. 18 out of the 20 look like they're going to make it to the flag here. And this, the visor cam for Mikael Sundstrom, nearly on pace. Bentley trying to get back inside the top 5. Meanwhile, Boothby is running Vanbrugh down. And he has Piffet in tow, does Boothby. So Vanbrugh could potentially, and that's the dangerous thing about that 5-second penalty with that forceful overtake, that could pop Vanbrugh off the podium back down to 4th place.
Yeah, and I mean, if you look, Boothby is slowly reeling him in as well. We've got 7 minutes. You've got a couple more laps to do it. And, well, the last time they crossed a timing board, it was a 6.4 second gap. That is now, you know, what, 1.4 seconds. It's coming down from the 8 that it used to be. So I have a feeling that, yeah, Boothby might actually have this. He's just got to not fight Piffet behind him. That's what they both need to do. If they can both get within that gap, then Vanbrugh will be demoted all the way down to 4th.
Absolutely. We can confirm that Mikael Sundstrom has not taken tires. Mikael's going to go 2 hours without taking tires on the Bentley, which I believe he's told me before that he reckoned was possible to do. And I've just now remembered that. I had a conversation with Mikael at some point in private about how good the Bentley was on the tires and how he reckoned you could double stint them without much problem. He's only about half a second off the overall pace. Almost everybody else, as far as we know in the booth, has taken tires except the 899 and still have the pace that they have. Is, well, again, you want to be surprised, but it's Mikael Sundstrom, so how surprised could you be? The man is rapid.
Yeah, it's still crazy to think, though, how much torture those tires have been through. And obviously looked after them very, very well. He has managed the pressure losses, the smashing of curbs, and the slight temperature difference that we had. I mean, you know, it was a nice 17-degree early start. It was quite low track temp. It's now 26C. So that will have really shoved the pressures up if you set them for early in the morning. So it's just this fine juggling act, but as he says, he's managed to keep it going. Was it the fastest strategy ever? Well, now that's the million-dollar question. The time for that has sort of come and gone, but still doing amazingly well to be 6th with those tires.
Well, it wouldn't be an RCI race if this didn't happen. Chat, Ryan, I have been doing some maths.
The maths.
I have determined that George Boothby is not only going to get within 5 seconds of Vanbrugh in the final 5 minutes, I think he may be able to run him down. And if Boothby runs him down, Piffet's going to run him down. What I don't know and what I can't prove with math is if Piffet is going to try and pass Boothby here, which the intent is there for Team Fordzilla in the Lexus. That could delay Boothby, and in fact has actually lost a 10th or 2 in Sector 2, did Boothby and Piffet on Vanbrugh. Keep in mind, Vanbrugh has a 5-second penalty that will be added on to his overall time. So if Boothby is within 5 seconds of Vanbrugh, that means Boothby will finish 2nd. And the same thing with Piffet, and considering their nose to tail, it won't take much. If you're Fabi and Piffet here, Ryan, what do? Do you ride around trying to get that spot, or are you all speed ahead trying to get around Boothby so you can have 2nd? I imagine it's the latter.
I would also imagine that it's the latter. I mean, we never really understand fully what goes on in the heads of certain racing drivers, but after the day that Fabian Piffet had, you know, qualified pole, showed amazing pace, and has just had problem after problem. Basically, he wants to recover anything that he can from that. He knows that that car necessarily has more pace than the 41 of Boothby, and he's now probably thinking, well, move out of the way, I'll get the job done quicker than you, I want that position. So, but obviously while they're doing that, it's costing each other time.
Well, you nailed it there. Oh no, and Boothby's going to go off into the dirt and off into the wall as Piffet. What on earth happened? That both of those separated. Was there contact before that, perhaps? And all of a sudden, Fabian Piffet's going to go through, but contact on the right side of the car will surely slow them down. And all of a sudden, on the outside, Boothby comes back, but is on the wrong side. If Boothby can hold on, this might be the preferred position, and he will. And it is Boothby back out in front.
Yeah, I think that was just a moment of avoiding action. Sort of tried to go to the right in case the McLaren rejoined, but then had a slight tap of the wall on the right side. But now you can see with all this scuffling that happened, there's now 7.9 seconds, and we've only got 2 minutes left. They had a shot at this, and now if they want that, they are going to have to quit squabbling, and for the last couple of laps, work together. And that penalty of Vanbrugh will come into play, but so far, I would say that going with the latter is that Fabian Piffet wants that position more than he does sort of an overall strategy call.
Well, it's a little bit bigger than just the race. Boothby and Piffet are going to emerge from this race as the two with a legitimate shot to win this championship. You can't count Macaulay out. Or not Macaulay, excuse me, Albin Bouquet. You can't count him out, but a terrible finish today will put a damper on his championship hopes. Bouquet will fall out of second in the hunt. Piffet will end up second, and it'll be around 100 points, which is doable, by the way, with the remaining races in the season. But Piffet trying everything he can to get by Boothby, and it has cost them, and this may keep Vanbrugh in second place, and I think it will do, as Martin Grady has taken the white flag here at Zolder. One more lap to go, and we're going to revisit a little tap, a couple of taps there on the back of George Boothby. I have no idea why coming out of the second chicane, I have no idea why Piffet hit the inside wall and Boothby took off towards the outside wall. I have no idea what happened there. It didn't make any sense to me visually. Joe McCauley has had a rough day. That day is going to continue that way here in the final moments going off there. But what can you say about Martin Grady, the man who runs under the banner, Tidgney? I don't even know what that means, by the way, folks at home. I don't know what Tidgney means, but he runs under that banner. Everyone calls him that in chat. And for Grady, what an absolutely brilliant day it's going to be for him. The 418 is going to win the race, the longest race of the season. Grady comes through. Vanbrugh will finish second and get to keep it. But what will become of third place? Boothby and Piffet come to the line. They will be nose to tail. And Boothby will fill out the final podium position. Piffet fourth.
Now we've got another lap, Jesse. Got another lap.
Oh my goodness, we do.
Hold your horses, place your bets. Final lap going on. It looks like Grady just took it with about 4 or 5 seconds to go.
I do apologize. I do apologize, those at home. I heard the race controller in my ear say that was the last lap, but it wasn't.
Yeah, we jumped the gun briefly, so no, bets back on. What is going to happen with this? Piffet all over the back of Boothby. trying to launch the chicane to get anything else out of that Lexus. He knows that it's Zolder now. He knows that they're not going to catch Vanbrugh. They're just too far behind. He wants that podium. He started on the podium. He wants to finish on the podium.
I'm mad at the race controller. The race controller said leaders on the final lap, and that turns out to not be true. Well, this is incredible stuff here. One last shot of it for Piffet, as he has been granted one more shot. It's going to be in the final chicane, and this time through, Martin Grady wins it for Tidgney in the 418. Only the third winner this season wins the race. Everything I said still applies. Vanbrugh comes through and will get to keep second. Boothby's going to come through, finish third, fill out the podium. Piffet will settle for fourth place. Malinowski will have a quiet day, but finish fifth, only just over Mikael Sundstrom, who was running him down at the end of that race. Sundstrom sixth. Kalat will finish seventh eventually over Jardier in eighth, Dornelis ninth, and Hooley will fill out the top 10. Pierre Giner 11th, Massoud 12th, Daldigny 13th, Bouquet 14th, Dorsch 15th, Macaulay 16th, Thomas 17th, Pride 18th, and those are all of our finishers. No final shakeups today, but an incredible day. As Macaulay is actually sitting on the side of the road, we can only assume out of fuel now.
I believe he's under fueled, that car. Does one of the marshals in the background
will that be a not classed because he didn't finish?
I don't actually know. Oh, someone's going to come and give him the push. Look, there we go.
This!
Pop.
Folks, have you ever seen the movie Cars?
Yeah, just give it a little push.
Now,
get to the line. Make sure everyone finishes.
I'm going to let you know something. In SRO, in international motorsport, this is illegal. Oh, in international motorsport, this is illegal. A car, it says in all the rule books, doesn't matter if it's SRO, FIA, they all say the same thing. Your car must finish the race under your own power without any help from any outside source. But this is RCI, and we think this is beautiful, and we don't care.
Riding the final corner.
Wait for it.
Wait for it.
The second most famous words in motorsport about to happen to you right here. Here comes Joe Macaulay, has had a tough race, and across the line.
There we go.
Well, that's not going to set any lap records, but Joe Macaulay gets there and will be classified. And if any of the stewards, and I say this in jest because this isn't a rule here at RCI, but if any stewards will even think about penalizing them, I'm going to have to call you out on stream next week because you don't have a heart. That was absolutely beautiful. Ryan Mawson, final thoughts on today's 2-hour race. Absolute insanity from the drop of the green flag.
Pretty much that. It was just non-stop action. Amazing to see what strategies we had played out. Like I said, fastest car having some problems along the way. Various Bentleys that were all on different strategies. Mikael Sundstrom lasting 2 hours on those sets of tires. And what an early strategy from the other Bentleys. Pitted early. We thought with our maths that they would come out ahead, and that is exactly what happened. And speak of the devil.
Well, we are joined by the man himself, Grady. What a race. I had to ask George Boothby this about 2 or 3 weeks ago, and now I have to ask you this. When did you know that strategy was going to work?
Oh, hopefully you can hear me.
Yes.
I don't know really, to be honest. I had the worst qualifying I wanted, and the first 2 laps I was literally all over the place. My car was very different to how I'd even practiced. Mainly because I've had to lower my force feedback because my wheel's playing up, so that was on the back of my mind. But then the stream chat was letting me know some of the times, and it kept coming down and down and down. And after that great fight with George, once we had clear air, I just went for it, and then yeah, I just stunned the minute I was in P2 and I saw an 18-second gap to the leader. I was just like, oh my word, it's happening.
Did you have that strategy from the start that you were going to do your first pit stop immediately and then pit at the halfway point? Did you know that's what you were going to do, or was that sort of circumstantial?
I came up with two strategies. I did it about an hour before the race, and it was if I start near the front, I'm going to do this, or if I start mid pack, I'll do this. But I saw that we had a fewer drivers than normal in, so I was like, this strategy might actually work if I just go straight in. And yeah, as I was coming in, actually, I got a little bit scared by George actually because we both came in at the same time, and I was on the left, but fortunately we survived and had a brilliant race. And then yeah, that was one of my two strategies basically.
Absolutely incredible. You have a following not only on your own stream, but our stream. Your fans were absolutely ravenous. They were cheering you on before qualifying started. We love to see it. First of all, congratulations on winning the longest race of the season in grand fashion. You had to work for it. How are you going to celebrate?
Well, I've already been singing. We have a song that we sing, which is "Tidge is on fire." But yeah, we sometimes do a shoey, but I don't have any shoes with me, so maybe another time.
Can I ask you what a Tidgeny is?
Well, I used to be very small for my age. I used to be 4'11" at 16. So, the long story short, basically, there was a Liverpool defender called Risa, and people used to shout out "Martigny Risa," and Tidgeny came from that.
Well, there you have it. Well, you've won this race, and that has got to be a big shot in the arm. Where do you go from this? I mean, do you think you can take it to the likes of Boothby and the rest of them at the end of this season now?
Um, Probably not. I mean, I'm using this season as a learning curve. Basically, I'm fairly new in quotes to ACC, so I'm just each round. Like you saw a while ago when at Imola, I think it was. I did the worst pit stop in history, so I had to learn pit stops. I'm really just learning on the fly, and then this was just another one of those things where I'm just learning.
Well, your chat calls you the king of the plebs, and I think I don't know why they call you that. You definitely your drive today was not pleb like. One more time, congratulations, Grady, on that win today. Bryant, do you have anything for our winner?
No, pretty much we've already said what there is to be said. Just was amazing to see. We kept doing the maths, and it was just coming down and coming down. And yeah, around about halfway through, we thought this might actually be our winner. And you'll be glad to know that you slowly got Jesse's percentage up as the hour went on.
I wasn't sure until right at the end, and I was like, I'm pretty sure he's got it. I tell you, our broadcaster Stewie said it from the get-go that he thought that you had the absolute perfect strategy, whether you knew it or not. He thought that you did at least. So good job. We're also joined by a couple of extra people, Tortellini, who otherwise known as Malinowski. Malinowski, what happened out there today? A decent result, but a hard day.
Oh yeah, it was definitely a very hard day, especially first part of the race. It was absolutely trash, but it was all on me. So yeah, really eventful race and a really tough one, like almost physical. It was so hot in my room and I was sweating so much. So it was really tough day, tough evening, but enjoyable. So top Porsche, I'm not complaining. Yeah, just good experience for the future on Zolder.
How difficult was it to drive a Porsche today?
It's a car that has ultimate speed here, and Bentley is of course a lot faster. Bentley is just the fastest, but Porsche has potential. It's just that it's really inconsistent, and it's just hard to get it out of the car. It's hard over curbs. It's really inconsistent over those big sausages and those chicanes. So you really need to be on it all the time and be super focused. And in the first stint, I had trouble with pressure, so my car was, the grip was on and off a lot of the times. So it was really hard to stay on it all the time. But in the second stint, I got the pressures moderately kinda in the windows how they should be, so it was a lot more enjoyable. Yeah, result is there, so I'm not complaining about V5. It was definitely the most that was possible today, especially considering what happened in the race. Those Bentleys were just unstoppable, and George did amazing job in that McLaren. There was also Lexus, I think, ahead. So kudos to those guys. Just great drive.
Well, there you have it. Malinowski top 5 today. And we got George Boothby, a hard fought third. George, are you there, first of all? And I got to say, oh man, nobody left you alone all day. You had to fight for your right to do anything out there today.
Man, I am so sweaty. That was a moist race. That was insane. I loved every second of it though. But yeah, like Macho was saying, it's just really tiring because it's such a physical track. So definitely gonna have a good night's sleep.
I gotta say, you held your own. Immense pressure from all sorts of world-class drivers out there today. No wonder why you're sweaty. I gotta say, that was some excellent driving and defending by the Boothby clan today. But where was the family? Where were they?
I don't know. Yeah, it was in my stream, so I don't know. Maybe it was maybe he got bored or something. I don't know.
You tell your dad. He missed some excellent commentary today. But George, you're the championship leader. You continue to be the championship leader. A couple of races to go. How confident are you now that you can win the whole thing?
I am actually quite confident because of how lucky I've been getting, and also just how many points I've been getting. So it is quite a margin now. But still, I guess anything can happen. So I'm confident, but still gonna obviously try really hard, do everything I can, and just maybe play it a little bit safe here and there just to make sure I get results.
Well, there you have it. George Boothby, P3 today after a hard-fought battle. Well, folks, it was a fantastic 2 hours at Zolder. Congratulations once again to all of our winners today. And what a crazy race what it ended up being. We'll have the points breakdown in a week from now when we are with you next. Big thank you to Ryan Mawson for sitting in for Mike Jones this week, and a thank you to all of you for being with us today for the broadcast. We hope that you have enjoyed it, and we hope to see you next time. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell. Ryan Mawson and me will be back with you tomorrow night for some night out racing action. And a big thank you again to all of our partners here at RCI. More information about them in the description, as well as a link to our Discord. Join, get involved. We would love to have you. Ryan Mawson, thank you for being here. And on behalf of myself, Jesse Lee, Ryan Mawson, and Stewie, our broadcaster, and the entire moderation admin team, and everybody on staff at RCI, thank you for being a part of today's broadcast, and we'll see you next time.
See you in the next one.